Here is what Ross Dellinger wrote. The conference presidents recently examined the proposal that would distribute revenue differently to league members in a move to provide stability and preserve the membership of Florida State and Clemson. Nothing is imminent, and particulars of the deal remain mostly private, but the structure's ultimate goal is to resolve a dispute with the Tigers and Seminoles, both suing the conference in an attempt to exit the league. Dellinger goes on to say, details around the new revenue structure remain murky, but the leaders have reviewed a plan to create a separate pot of revenue to be divided based on media value metrics. This separate distribution would be specifically tied to a school's television viewership, like Diesel said a minute ago, viewership ratings for football and potentially basketball. Where this, I believe, became an issue for Clemson is when the Clemson Tigers Diesel won 2 national championships, right? And the ACC, the money that was received by the ACC didn't just go to Clemson, right? It had to be divvied up. And I want to credit David Hood for an exceptional article on tigernet.com. David joins us every Monday at 4:20. If you need a little bit more in depth on this, and we'll go through this and read and react in a minute, but David Hood wrote a tremendous article. It's on the very front page, tigernet.com. You can find it there. It's titled, The ACC, Clemson, and FSU Are Taking Increased Revenue Distribution. Is it enough? Instant reaction, Diesel, before we dive into the article by David Hood, do you feel like this is a good enough plan that the ACC would say yes?
Well, again, I don't know why the ACC would say yes to this. Pay us more money and let us out early. I mean, this seems like it's a win-win for Clemson and Florida State and a lose-lose for the ACC and the other member institutions who are essentially riding Clemson and Florida State's financial coattails.
Sure.
You know, in basketball, Cole, you get paid based on units that you earn by making it into the NCAA basketball tournament, right? You make it into the round of 64, you get this unit, and this is how much you get paid for it. You make it to the round of 32, you get another unit, you get paid for it again. And again and again and again, the farther and farther you make it. But in football, most conferences, they take all the revenue that they make from all the bowl games that their teams play in, and then they divvy it up equally. That way, a team that plays in a bowl game gets the same money as a team that doesn't play in a bowl game. And I understand why that's unfair. You have the protection of, if you have a bad year, you're still going to get that couple $100,000 or a couple $1,000,000 because a couple of teams in your conference played in a bowl game. But if you're the one who's consistently out there earning for your conference, and then you're having to give that away to schools who are not doing a damn thing to earn for your conference, then I understand why you're upset about it.
Now, I guess to play the devil's advocate side and disagree with what you said about the ACC not allowing this, would you not agree that while the ACC, when you look at this situation, you look at this discussion that was brought on by the presidents of the member schools, would you not say that the ACC, while it does seem like they're the ones that are going to have to be forking out a lot more cash, they need to hold on to Clemson and Florida State, even though this may not benefit them immediately in the long run, with Clemson having a road to the college football playoff every single season and almost betting your you-know-what that they're going to get revenue from college football playoff and the ACC because of the expanded playoff. Don't you feel like the ACC kind of needs to keep that in conference?
What does the ACC get out of this? That's genuinely what I want to know. What does the ACC get out of this deal? And that's why I'm saying, if I'm Jim Phillips, and if I feel like, and we have heard nothing to the contrary on this yet to this point, if I still feel like I've got Florida State and Clemson by the short and curlies, I've got no reason to pay you more money other than to hope that 6 years down the road, and 2030 is the number that they put into this proposal, is to hope that 6 years down the road, you'll be happy and you won't leave us. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. 2030 is the same year that the Big 12 grant of rights ends.
Sure.
And anything could happen at that point, right? The Big 12 could invite Clemson and Florida State in. They could add another team in Florida. They can add a team in South Carolina. It makes sense for the Big 12. People have talked about the Big 12 when it comes to the ACC. And we haven't heard yet once from the ACC how they plan on generating more money for their member institutions. And that's the reason why Clemson and Florida State are pissed off and want out in the first place.
Yeah.
Is because they've watched the Big 10 and the SEC raise their per team payout year after year after year. And Jim Phillips has sat on his ass and not done a damn thing.
So I want to note what David Hood had to bring up in this article about the ACC distribution of revenue compared to other conferences, because I think it is very interesting when you look at what the ACC does on a yearly basis compared to the SEC. David Hood points out a very good point, or brings up a very good point here. David says the payout of the ACC schools from the media rights deal is inferior to the SEC. We talked about that a minute ago, Diesel, and Big Ten, and puts the league schools at a competitive disadvantage due to the monetary discrepancy. Mm-hmm. For instance, during the 2022-2023 year, the ACC distributed an average of $44.8 million per school, while the SEC was around $7 million more per school. Big difference, right? We all know that the difference, or what the difference makes when it comes to the SEC versus the ACC. I do like what David said when he brings up, if the two schools are willing to listen to the ACC and vice versa, if the ACC is willing to listen to Clemson and Florida State and the other presidents who have sat around the table, sat around the conference room, and drummed this up. David says one would think that the restructured amounts would be significant enough, right, to make everybody happy, meaning it would have to bring the schools on an even playing field with the schools in the other conferences. So I guess, Diesel, from the standpoint of Clemson and Florida State, when you talk about them being happy, and I know you asked the question a minute ago about what makes the ACC win on this side of the deal, in terms of Clemson and Florida State, if they can stay in the ACC in the lawsuits and get the same amount that the other schools are making in different conferences, I agree with you. I don't know why the ACC would do it, but from the Clemson-Florida State standpoint, to me, it does make sense.
Unless the ACC is hemorrhaging money and they are really kind of getting tired of dealing with all this legal stuff. I'm not just tired of it, but they are getting to the point where they financially don't want to keep doing this. That's the only reason why I see the ACC would ever agree to this, would ever agree to pay Clemson and Florida State more money for staying and let them out 6 years earlier. So we've always known there's this massive discrepancy. Where is this money coming from? Are they going to be taking it away from the smaller schools who don't generate the kind of revenue that Clemson and Florida State do? Now, Florida State, maybe people are tuning in to watch the train wreck a little bit more this year than in years past. It's probably this year would go to Clemson and Miami. People are going to be tuning in to watch those schools. So are they gonna drop the per school payout of Wake Forest and Syracuse and Pitt and Virginia Tech so that Clemson and Florida State are happy? And then that adds in a whole new ball of worms, Cole, when it comes to making for a disgruntled conference. You got a whole lot of members who feel like, even if they're not, they feel like they're putting in the work for this conference.
Yeah.
I know they're not. Nobody, I think, in their right mind would debate, other than them, that they're not putting in the same amount of work.
Yeah.
But it's like the conversation we had yesterday with NIL and the judge in California. Her big concern was when you take money away from somebody that's already got a stream of getting it, what are you going to do?
Sure.
How are you going to enforce anything like that?
You can join us, join the conversation. You can listen to Wire to Wire, 97.1 Spartanburg, 97.7 Greenville. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Adatola of Rock and Rolla chimes in on the YouTube stream, Diesel. The ACC is willing to suddenly pay more and let schools leave 6 years earlier, ? That FSU Clemson find something out about the grant of rights we haven't heard about for this sudden about face by the conference. For this sudden about face by the conference. And again, to answer your question, here's what we don't know. The about face, right? The 180-degree turn that you're talking about, we don't know if the ACC truly has made that 180-degree turn. We just know that
it's been proposed.
The presidents have come together about it. Listen, from the team standpoint, from the program standpoint, I like it. I think it's a good thing. But the entire conversation that we haven't had, will it pass? That's a completely different story, because Diesel just said a few minutes ago, and I asked the question, Anatola, what does it benefit them if Jim Phillips doesn't see a way it benefits them? If he truly does feel like he has a stranglehold on both Clemson and Florida State, then I don't know that this will pass. However, I think it's the best solution we've heard yet.
Yeah, Clemson and Florida State, one of a couple different things is happening here. Is they know that the conference is running short on their finance and their budget to be able to continue this litigation. And I guess Florida State and Clemson are prepared to keep on litigating this for as long as it takes. Sure. Or, to Ayatollah's point here, maybe they have found some loophole. Maybe they have found that smoking gun, right? That silver bullet, that this is the thing that's going to get us out of here. And so to get what we want, we're going to keep this thing secret. We're not going to tell Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech and NC State and North Carolina and Duke about this silver bullet if you'll pay us more money, right? Mm. We'll help you keep all of them, which is essentially extortion. Have they figured something like that out?
And when you talk about the other members of the conference, and I believe you were talking about it just a second ago when I was getting to the phones, I don't know that the other, I would love to be a fly on the wall in these conversations. I don't know what, Diesel, the other members of the conference bring in terms of value when you're having these conversations, when all the presidents are meeting. I would imagine that it goes very much like, okay, let's start the meeting. Okay, Clemson's president and Florida State's president, you sit here. Everybody else, you sit on this side of the table, right? We'll get to you if we need you. I don't know in terms of value what they bring to this proposal. I do understand why Clemson and Florida State are pushing for it. I just don't know in terms of value if they bring much.
Well, as far as Clemson and Florida State are concerned, generally speaking, not this year. We know Florida State sucks. 0-3, lost to Memphis.
Sure. Normally.
They are Judge Smales, and they're looking across the table and saying the world needs ditch diggers too. We need teams to beat up on to boost our win-loss record every single year. I don't see why the ACC would agree to this. I mean, a shorter term, let us out 6 years early, and consider the fact, well, when did we find out that Texas and OU, when was it first announced that Texas and OU were going to be joining the SEC? And then how long did it actually take for them to join?
That's a great point.
It took them a while. And most of the time, I think even that one was expedited a little bit, right? Most of the time when you hear a school is interested in leaving their conference, you hear about it, and then a year later, the invitation is sent. This is when it used to happen the old-fashioned way, right? An invitation was sent. It took that school a while to consider it. Then they would say yes, and then it would take 2 to 3 years for them to actually start playing in that conference. So this was a long, drawn-out process. And now, 2030 is not that far away. It's 6 years from now, and that is not far. I know we're doing everything faster in conference realignment than we've ever done it before, and these decisions are getting made so much faster. But 6 years is not that far in the grand scheme of conference realignment.
And it's not. And that's kind of my point from a Clemson standpoint, Diesel. They would be able to stay in the conference, not have to change conferences, maybe potentially twice in a matter of 6 to 8 to 10 years. Then if it does pass, if this proposal does pass with the ACC, not only are they able to stay put, but they're also able to have the grant of rights deal axed or shortened to whatever it's supposed to be or whatever they decide on, and they feel like they're making as much as the other big dogs in the Big 12 and the SEC.
And they may be looking at it and saying, we're the only thing that's saving this conference from completely falling apart. Like, you have us.
I think so.
You have us for now, and we will acknowledge that you have us for now. But we're telling you flat out, 2036, when the opportunity arises, we're gone. Even if we don't have a conference to go to, we'll go independent. We're gone, and you lose everything.
And I know we have to run, but David's last point, David Hood, who wrote this article on TigerNet.com, I thought was the best point, Diesel, talking about why it benefits Clemson to stay in the ACC. Let's call it like it is. And David said it in the very last paragraph of his article. It gives them a great path to the college football playoff year in and year out, right? We don't know in the super conference that we believe is coming 8 to 10 years from now or maybe sooner. We don't know what that path to the college football playoff will look like year in and year out for Clemson. We do know right now it's pretty darn easy for Clemson to get there year in and year out.
Well, it depends on how rock solid the contracts for the new 12-team college football playoff are. I mean, people have joked that the ACC is turning into a one-bid conference. That may be all it is, because the SEC and the Big Ten, who hold all the chips, who have the most powerful teams, could look for expansion and say, well, we want guarantees that we're going to get X number of schools out of our conference into this, and the ACC would essentially be another group of 5. When we come back, Cole, is Colorado fatigue, and I believe it is, hurting Travis Hunter's chances at the Heisman Trophy? Where is he at right now in the current odds? And we'll discuss that point next on the Fan Upstate. Cole, you're somebody who likes to throw a little scratch on the table every now and again.
Every now and then.
Somebody likes to wager. Somebody who likes to gamble, as they say, even though it's not legal in South Carolina. You can do.
No idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you're pulling it off. It's not my business to try to find out.
Fake.
But
it's just for fun.
But as the Heisman Trophy story begins to start picking up a little bit of steam, right? We've got a couple of games under our belts. We've seen these guys go out and play.
Yeah.
We're starting to see odds for the Heisman Trophy adjust. And I beg the question, when we have a talent like we have in Travis Hunter at Colorado.
Oh, I thought you were going DJ.
Why is he as far down the Heisman Trophy odds list as he is? Now, we know that the Heisman Trophy has essentially just taken over the Davey O'Brien, right? Davey O'Brien is for the best quarterback in FBS football. And if you look at the odds, Cole, you have to go all the way down to number 11 before you find a non-quarterback in the top list of players who have a chance to go out there and win the Heisman Trophy. And you get all the way down to number 11, and you get to Ashton Genty, who is the running back at Boise State, who has been crushing it in the first couple of weeks of the season. And then you find Travis Hunter at number 12. And I'm begging the question, and I think there's some legitimacy to this. That's why I brought it up. That the college football world is just really over Colorado. Like, you got a couple of loudmouths out there who are still banging that Colorado drum. Oh, congratulations. You beat an FCS team and you beat a crappy in-state FBS team from a different level of football, the G5 level. Great. You're 2-1. But you can't deny just how good Travis Hunter is. And he is the type of player that doesn't come along but like once in a generation in college football. So why is it that when he's out there playing as much as he is and playing at as high level as he is, he's not even cracking the top 10 for the Heisman Trophy odds?
Well, it's a good question. I do think if you look at the pie and the reasonings that lie in the pie, Diesel, I think the quarterback position probably takes up a large portion of that pie. It's always been a quarterback favorite. It's always the Heisman Trophy. We could almost just simply call it a quarterback award, right?
Right, but that's what the Davey O'Brien is.
And right. However, it's been a long time since we've seen a non-quarterback win the darn thing. I do believe that Travis Hunter is a good player. I'll say this. I don't know. I'm not a Heisman voter. I'm not David Hood. But when you talk about impact player, I would assume, and I'm going to use the word assume, and I know it's not great to, but I'm going to do it. Sometimes it makes a you-know-what of you and me. But I'm going to assume that when you talk about these odds that are listed on the price of these players that are in the Heisman watch, a lot of it has to do with impact. How much impact do these guys have on their team? If you take Cam Ward off of the Miami Hurricanes, they're not going to be a very good team at all. You take Jackson Dart off Ole Miss, same story. I would assume that a lot of it has to do with the type of impact that the player makes. And I know you can say that Travis Hunter makes a big impact. He's the best receiver they have, and that's true. However, the quarterback's the one, because going back to my original point about it being a quarterback award, the quarterback's always going to make more of an impact, good or bad. You look at DJU this season. You talk about making an impact. DJU's made a heck of an impact in a bad way. But I just don't think the receiver makes quite the impact that the quarterback does.
So you're guilty, Cole, of buying into the narrative of your importance is relative to the distance you are away from the quarterback when
Correct.
The ball is snapped.
That's correct.
Or from the football when the ball is snapped. So you're buying into that narrative that the quarterback, no matter what, is the most important player on the field at all times, in which case this is just the Davey O'Brien award.
Yeah.
This is not the Davey O'Brien. We have a Davey O'Brien for the best quarterback. The Heisman Trophy is supposed to be the most outstanding player in all of college football. And you look at these odds, Cole, you got I'm not necessarily arguing against any of these guys being deserving this point in the season of being in the top 10 of the Heisman Trophy odds. They're all very good players. I'm not arguing that. But you got Cam Ward at number 1, who's played nobody. You got Jackson Dart, who's played nobody. Jalen Milroe, at least his Alabama Crimson Tide have faced Wisconsin. Nico at Tennessee played nobody. Dylan Gabriel, his best performance was against a Group of 5 team. Carson Beck at Georgia has looked awful. Looked really good against Clemson also. Arch Manning's not even a starter. What the hell is Arch Manning doing at number 7 in the odds right now when he's not even a starter over a guy that plays 100+ snaps a game on both sides of the football? Like, have you ever heard the saying, we've lost the plot? We've lost the plot on what the Heisman Trophy is.
And I would argue that you're right. I would just say it was lost a long time ago, right? I would say that
but
you're
shouldn't
right.
we try to get it back? Shouldn't we try, instead of just buying into this as a quarterback award and it's always going to be a quarterback award? I mean, look at all the great running backs and wide receivers that have ever won the Heisman Trophy award before. And you're going to tell me that we'll never, ever, ever have another running back win the Heisman. Doesn't that feel wrong? Doesn't that feel wrong to you?
It should, however, it don't. I'll tell you why. To Adatola's point on the YouTube stream, who brings up, if your team's not winning 10 games, you're not getting the award.
That's true.
Again, he says it, whether fair or not, just like he says, you're putting me in the same group of it may not be fair, but it is what it is. So to answer your question, yeah, it shouldn't be a quarterback award. However, if I'm a voter this year, I'll tell you this, Diesel, if I'm a voter this year, as good as Travis Hunter is, he's not in my top 3. He's not in my top 5 in terms of impactful players. Cam Ward, Jackson.
Yeah, but how many games would they win? I understand Colorado sucks.
Yeah.
But how many, and they only won 4 games last year, how many would they have won if it was just Shadur and he didn't have Travis Hunter?
Probably
none.
1, 2, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm saying, look, he's impactful, but he's not. My argument is the quarterback touches the football every single play.
So,
and the quarterback's the most impactful. And like when you go back and look at the list of the last 8 Heisman Trophy winners, Diesel, 7 of the last 8 have been quarterbacks, other than Devonta Smith, who was fantastic out of Alabama. You just it's hard for me to argue against past Heisman winners.
So you've kind of, in a weird way, you've made my point for me, because you're applying this logic of, well, he plays on crappy Colorado, right? He plays on crappy Colorado, so he can't win the Heisman. Well, where does he rank when you actually look at the numbers among wide receivers and cornerbacks? He ranks second.
I was going to say top 3.
Second nationally in receptions. Second nationally in receiving touchdowns. 7th nationally in receiving yards. And he's a better cornerback than he is a wide receiver. People don't throw at Travis Hunter. He's got an interception, 2 pass breakups, and 11 tackles. I'm not saying those are massive numbers, but people don't throw at him. Quarterbacks don't throw at him. So he is as elite as it gets nationally when it comes to being a wide receiver. And he's equally as good as a cornerback, yet he's not even sniffing the top 10 in the Heisman odds. And I think some of that, and we would have to ask Brent Beard, our resident Heisman Trophy voter,
or David Hood, and ask them, and this might be like an off the record thing. They probably couldn't tell us this live on the air, because then that would certainly taint the award. Like, are the Heisman Trophy voters, generally speaking, getting a little tired of Deion, getting a little tired of his antics, getting a little tired of talking about Colorado? Because you and I both know this is almost always who is a quarterback on a really good team that's playing in a power conference, who's also made the playoffs and probably going to the national championship game. Yeah. I mean, that is a Mount Doom height of a mountain that you got to climb to go be a Heisman Trophy winner. And I think it sucks. I mean, you want to devalue the Heisman Trophy, stack the deck so that everyone knows it's going to be a quarterback, probably coming out of the SEC or the Big Ten, probably playing at Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. Would you like it better, Diesel, if they did away? Okay, let's say let me give you this this proposal. Would you like it better if they said, okay, from the Heisman Trophy standpoint, we already have the Bill O'Brien Award, like you said, which is for quarterbacks, right? We're going to make the Heisman Trophy no quarterbacks. No quarterbacks allowed in the Heisman Trophy conversation. You don't want that.
No, I don't want that.
But you're saying that some instances
I don't want
think,
only quarterbacks to win this thing.
Yeah.
And it's been 7 out of the last 8.
Yeah. I just think that when you look at 7 of the last 8, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, Devonta Smith, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, I think those guys are such impact player guys, it's hard to argue against them. I'm not saying that it should always be quarterbacks. I'm not playing that side of the coin. However, if I'm a Heisman voter, I'm going to be in the guilty party that you're talking about because Travis Hunter's not going to be in my top 5. Maybe 6, maybe 7, but I'm talking about impact players who touch the ball every single snap. And that's my point.
So we've only had a player even remotely like Travis Hunter in the last 20 years. Chris Gamble played at Ohio State. Maybe you remember the name. He was a two-way starter, and everybody thought he was absolutely amazing for being a two-way starter, right? Well, he only started at positions on both sides of the ball in 5 games while he was at Ohio State, in 2002, the season where he did this. He only tallied 100 snaps 3 times that season. Travis Hunter does that every single week. 129 snaps against North Dakota State, 126 against Nebraska, 123 snaps against Colorado State. I can't think of a way to be more impactful than that. And if you're telling me that that's not good enough because you're not the quarterback, like what do you want? Like, do you want Nico to go out there and play, nickel? So that it's ludicrous what we're talking about. The fact that Travis Hunter, and again, I'm not standing for Travis Hunter. I'm standing for having a position other than a quarterback have a damn shot to win this thing. It's completely ridiculous where we are with the Heisman Trophy Award. That said, what Deion Sanders needs to do, if he wants to fix Colorado and start winning, I think he needs to stop talking about let's go out there and win football games. He needs to build a culture that his program puts guys in the NFL and puts them in contention for the major awards. That's how he starts getting elite quarterbacks. You start getting elite quarterbacks. You start getting elite running backs and receivers and offensive linemen as well.
What say you? 71307. Start your text with the word fan to put a bow on it. I hear you. I just, you know what? Maybe my brain's just so used to it being dominated by quarterbacks that I'm okay with it. And I do think that the quarterback should have a hand up just because they do touch the ball every snap. We'll come back to that conversation if we have time. You can get your thoughts on the text line. Start your text with the word fan. However, in the very next segment, we've got to get to the bottom of these ticket fees. I'm not talking about the ticket fees you pay right now. I'm talking about Tennessee's ticket fees. Where's this 10% going? We'll tell you next. Not start the Upset Picks Challenge until 4 p.m. Diesel did send you a text back to let you know, but you've got to wait 13 more minutes until the Upset Picks Challenge starts.
Yeah, looking at you, Hog Dog and Noel.
Yeah,
Hog Dog and Noel. We have rules, and we enforce them.
4 p.m.
Your picks will not count if they're sent in before 4 o'clock.
13 minutes from now, resend them, and they will count. Okay? Upset Pick Challenge brought to you by Ingles. We appreciate Ingles. We'll get to that 13 minutes from now, so stay tuned and get those texting fingers ready. Find your game. Tennessee Volunteers have made a very bold statement, Diesel. You know, we saw this yesterday. We did not get a chance to touch on it yesterday. Tennessee has decided that they are going to implement a 10% fee for all ticket sales at football games. Well, what is this 10% fee that you speak of? Tennessee has decided, look, to help the players who are already getting NIL, who are already getting paid, we're going to add this 10% talent fee that will be added to the cost of 2025 football season tickets in preparation for the arrival of revenue sharing with college athletes. That, along with an initial 4.5% average increase, Diesel, means Tennessee Vol fans will pay 14.5% more on average tickets, or on average for tickets next season. Initial reaction, you love it, you hate it, now paying more because they've got to get their money.
Well, it sucks, but how does 10% turn into 14.5%?
Well, it goes from 10%, the initial 4.5% average increase that was added to all of the tickets for season ticket holders just to begin with.
Okay.
So now they're talking about a 14.5 bump.
Yeah, that sucks. It really sucks. I mean, I would love to see a school that is not selling out their season tickets or selling out their stadium week in and week out try something like this. I mean, could you imagine telling fans of Bowling Green or Eastern Michigan, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to add 10% to your season ticket costs, which, if you don't know, they don't sell a whole lot of tickets there, especially because they play a lot of games on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I mean, this is taking advantage of your most loyal fans who you know will spend whatever it costs. You set the price, whatever you want it to be, and they will spend it to get into your stadium. I think this sucks, because for the longest time, schools would justify increasing ticket costs by saying, hey, we're adding amenities to the stadium, right? We're adding more concessions. We're adding more this. We're having this special, cooling lounge because it gets really hot here.
Yeah.
Or we're adding more Wi-Fi. We're doing all these upgrades to the stadium and we're passing the cost along to you, which is justifiable. But there's a lot of fans out there who don't want to see players get paid NIL for whatever reason. But those people now don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. If you want to come see your favorite team play, you are going to be paying these players. You have no other option in it.
So athletic director at Tennessee, Danny White, sent out a video, 4.5-minute video to all of the passionate Tennessee Volunteer fans. Part of his message, he wanted to let Vol fans know, Diesel, that part of an extensive plan to continue our dominance in college athletics and build something like we've never seen before.
What dominance? You're at Tennessee.
Well, that's a valid point. Not Pat Summit days anymore. They are pushing, they are preaching, Tennessee is, that this ticket fee, this talent fee of 10% will help the players get what they need and help Tennessee, the program, the university, everybody involved reach an all new level of success. So you know what? If you pay the 10%, it may hurt at the beginning, but you're going to be pulling for a team that wins and wins big.
So here's what's interesting to me. Are they basing it as a 10% bump on what you were previously paying for your ticket? Because, for example, a 20th row, 50-yard line season ticket is far more expensive than a nosebleed up in the top. You can get a season ticket up there. As a matter of fact, I looked it up. What is the cheapest season ticket you can get at Tennessee? Well, that's in the what they call the family section, upper deck,
that's brutal up there.
$453
I've sat there. It's awful.
for a season ticket. I can imagine that season tickets down on the 20th row at the 50-yard line ain't $453. So are you adding 10% to the $2,000?
Yeah.
Or is it a flat fee where every ticket sold is getting a $10 ticket fee?
You would assume
$10
a flat
talent
fee, right? It would have to make sense. It would have to be.
Or are you putting the onus to pay for this on the fans who were already paying the most money for their season tickets? If you're paying $2,000 for a season ticket down low, that 10% is all of a sudden a lot more money than a 10% bump on a $450 season ticket.
Or maybe they're having to pay for Tony Vitello, who's now the highest paid college baseball coach in the country, making $3 million a year. Maybe that's what they're paying for.
The cheapest ticket at Neyland Stadium after this in 2025 will be $75 per ticket per game.
Upper deck.
Unbelievable. When we come back, it is time. Looking at you, texters. Noel, looking at you, Hog Dog. When we come back, 6.5 minutes from right now, we open up the upset picks right here on the Fan Upstate. It is time for the challenge that is sweeping the upstate. The Ingles Upset Picks Challenge here on the Fan Upstate Wire to Wire. He's Cole Bryson. I'm Diesel. It is official. It's like a shotgun start at a golf tournament. It's time to start getting your picks in. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Give us your name, give us your game, and give us your spread. We got to have those three things. If we don't have those three things, it is an invalid pick. We're not going to go search for lines for you. We're not going to check back on the number and say, oh, that's actually so-and-so who's texting in. They didn't put their name on it. Nah, bro, that's not how this works. You got to get your name, your game, and your spread. Now, if you're just tuning in, if you've just found the Fan Upstate and Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson, you might be asking yourself, what is this? What is this Upset Picks Challenge? Well, I'm glad you asked, fictional texter. It's made it very, very simple how this challenge works. You are tasked with picking a betting underdog who you think will get the outright upset in a college football game this weekend. You could pick a lot of different games, right? You could pick, the 3-point games, the 2.5-point games, like the Florida State. How is Florida State still a favorite? I mean, they're 0-3.
Yeah, they suck.
And they're favored over whoever it is they're playing this weekend. Cal, which is just ludicrous, right? You can't favor an 0-3 team over anybody at this point. But you can pick that game if you want to. If you think Cal will upset Florida State, make them go 0-4, then text it in. Say, hey, this is Johnny. I think Cal plus 2.5 is going to upset Florida State. Or you can go big, right, with the big ones. I think Marshall is like 40-point dogs on the road at Ohio State. If you want to pick that one, you can. You got a very low likelihood of that one hitting, but you can pick it if you want to, because this is a long challenge. This is a long season, still a lot of football to be played, still an opportunity for you, even if you're just getting into the game or sitting at 0 like I still am. There's still a chance. To climb the leaderboard and get into the top 10 of this challenge. You can do it. So go to ESPN.com. That's the website we use for our official spreads. We lock them in as of 3 o'clock on Wednesdays. So you go there, you find a game, you text it in, your name, your game, and your spread. And we'll let you know on Monday who hit, who didn't hit.
I'm looking, Diesel. I'd love a challenge. However, sometimes I like getting my points before everybody else does. I'm looking to see if there's any point in me looking at Thursday night, 7:30, your alma mater, App State hosting South Alabama. App State's a 7.5-point favorite. I have no reason to take South Alabama other than I'd be a winner on Friday. And I wouldn't have to wait until next week to brag.
I tried that too, and it didn't work out for me at all.
Yeah, and South Alabama's 1-2. I don't have a ton of faith in South Alabama to go on the road. I think, being at home on a Thursday night, that place is probably going to be rocking.
South Alabama put up like 80 points last week.
80?
Yeah, they played like
8-0?
Yes, they played a nobody, and they put up just a ridiculous amount of points.
87 to be exact.
Yeah.
87-10 over Northwestern State. Mascot?
I've literally never heard of Northwestern State. I'm going to guess that's Northwestern Louisiana. Can you tell me am I right? Is Northwestern State in Louisiana?
Let me look. I've got the mascot.
Because Northwestern State.
Yeah, you're right. It is in Louisiana.
Northwestern State Bulldogs.
You'll never get it. Vic the Demon. They're the Demons.
The Demons? Oh, dude, that's official. I officially want a Northwestern State hat.
Yeah.
Or a t-shirt. Come on.
Again,
Demons.
Everybody, what I find so fascinating about this challenge, and by the way, on the text line, we can't even find the first text. So many texts have come in just in these last few minutes as the Upset Picks Challenge has begun. What I find so fascinating, which drives me crazy, but at the same time I love it, is that while people will tell you there are ways to look at games, you have strategies, This person may say I do this. This person may say I do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this thing's a crapshoot.
It really is.
I mean, that's based on my, first 4 weeks of playing. This is a total crapshoot. I have come to the conclusion, Diesel, no disrespect to our guy, Amazon guy, but this is luck. This is luck. It's about like playing roulette, playing blackjack. It's luck.
Unless you are like Josh Pate, who does a phenomenal job on his show, the Late Kick Show. Mm-hmm. And he has like an army of analysts working for him. Unless you are that, where you have just access to data like that, you can't know. You can't know. Like, I've come so close twice. I got blown out once, but I came close twice. And if I had hit on those two and they were stolen away from me
really
at
close.
The very last second of the game, they were stolen, I would be in the top half of this challenge.
You would be.
Yeah.
If the nuts were candies and butts, we'd all be wishing you a Merry Christmas,
only works
right?
in horseshoes and hand grenades.
That's right. And we're not playing horseshoes. We're not playing cornhole. You've got to get on the board. You've got to get points. I tell you what, man, there are a ton of entries coming in, and I'm going to be very frank with you. I may look at our entries from our Tolos and kind of lean that way. As of right now, 4:07 p.m., I have not made my upset pick.
Really?
I have not done it. I did it early last week, kind of on the spur, didn't put much thought into it. I took South Carolina the week before, and, it didn't work for me. That strategy just didn't work for me last week. Have you made yours?
I have.
Ooh.
I have made mine. Before we get to my upset pick, we have our daily Dewey. Is Dewey calling in to make his upset challenge pick, or is he just calling in to tell us we suck and we should be fired?
Yes, you do suck and you should be fired, but I got a pick.
Okay.
Akron over South Carolina. 35 points.
Is it really 35?
Yes.
Dewey, I thought you were a Gamecock fan.
You don't sound confident in the 35 points, Dewey.
Are you not a Gamecock?
Yes, I am, because South Carolina lays an egg after they beat a team, and then they almost beat a team. And they're sad right now.
So yesterday it was Shane Beamer forever. Can we get a preview of Monday morning's call or Monday afternoon's call? If Akron upsets South Carolina, how will you feel about Shane Beamer then?
He could probably stay, but
so Dewey's philosophy, just so everybody knows, South Carolina lays an egg after they get a win they're not supposed to, and then they almost win. So that's 2 back-to-back weeks winning and then almost winning, and then this is their MO.
Well, Dewey, just so you know, the spread is 28. It's not 35. So I'm going to put you down for it. And if you get it right, if Akron just rips the heart out of Gamecock Nation, you'll get 28 points, and you will be, according to the list we have right now, that would put you in 3rd place if you hit on that one.
Yeah. Akron's going to win.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, Dewey.
Dewey, we appreciate you.
No shot. All love for you, Dewey. Appreciate you calling the show, but I'll tell you this. You have absolutely no shot at hitting. I don't care if Lenora Sellers is playing. I don't care if Lenora Sellers is in Houston.
If South Carolina loses that game, fire Shane Beamer right now.
Oh, God.
Right now.
That's bad.
So here we got a lot of picks rolling in. And remember, guys, if you get an automatic bounce back text, that is proof, that is confirmation that your text did go through. We've got JB, who wants James Madison plus 10.5 over North Carolina. We've got Brian Andrews, who's taking Southern Miss plus 6 versus Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State's 0-3. I looked at that game. John Corley wants Coastal plus 3.5 over Virginia. The Coastal is hosting that game. Scotty Mack says, give me Temple plus 6.5 over Utah State. Hurst gets in and wants SMU over TCU plus 3. Leprechaun of Lyman wants BYU over Kansas State plus 7.5. Tolo Steve says Illinois plus 7.5 over Nebraska. I looked at that one yesterday. Gold Rush wants Mississippi State plus 6. Gold Rush, you didn't give me the opponent. Gold Rush. Please send your text back in with the full and complete game. We've got CJ from Greer, who wants Michigan plus 5 over Southern Cal. Ethan Reed wants Cal 2.5 over Florida State. Ethan, I think you might be onto a really good pick there. It's just not really going to help you with 2.5 points. Greenville Gamecock says, give me NC State over Clemson plus 20.5. Noel wants James Madison plus 10.5 over North Carolina. Dewey taking Akron plus 28 on the road at South Carolina. Palmetto Buckeyes says he wants Mississippi State over Florida. That's plus 6. Coach AJ wants Coastal Carolina plus 3.5 over Virginia.
Two more. Don't stop now.
We do.
Two more.
Okay, there we go.
I thought you were going to get to them.
Well, I was reading off of my Google Doc, not
gotcha.
off of the text line. Just Jess
Jess
is taking James Madison plus 10.5 against NC State.
Oh.
And Amazon guy says, I'll pick another day.
Amazon guys going with a little strategy here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not wanting the Tolos to take a sneak peek at what his pick is.
So I'm glad that we have Blaylock's Run, who just messaged in on the stream, says, first-time listener, I'm from Maryland, moved down here a month ago. Can someone explain the upset challenge? Dan, you're doing a good job in the stream, but here's what you need to do. Blaylock's Run. Go on ESPN.com, go to the college football scores page or the schedule page. They both have the lines on it. And pick a game that you think a betting underdog will outright win the game. So, for example, if you're on there right now and you're looking at the Akron, South Carolina game, and you see that South Carolina is favored by 28 points. If you pick Akron to go out there and get the outright win against South Carolina, you would get 28 points added to a rolling season-long tally of points. Now, how we get you to come back week in and week out is we set it up so that if you get a pick wrong next week, you lose a point. If you don't come back to pick at all, you lose 2 points. So we got to get you back here week in and week out in this challenge. And the strategy is different for everybody, as Cole was just talking about. Some people like to pick those 3, 5, 7 point upsets, which seem more likely that those are going to happen. But you also have to stack up a lot more of those to do well in this challenge against your fellow Tolos.
Yep.
Or you can take the big time upsets like Akron over South Carolina, but the chances of those hitting are pretty low. It's not to say that's impossible, but they're pretty low.
I have not seen a lot of votes in yet or a lot of picks for Stanford-Syracuse. Stanford-Syracuse, not the biggest point spread in the world, 8.5 as of right now. I don't know if that's what it was locked in at 3 p.m., but this game's a tough matchup, I believe, to pick. I'll say this. I'm leaning Syracuse-Stanford, and this is not my most confident pick. Stanford's 1-1, Syracuse is 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
But Syracuse comes into this game scoring over 34 points per game. They've done a lot of damage through the air. The Stanford Cardinal, not Cardinals, right, mm-hmm. have done an above average run against, or an above average job against the run this season. They've looked bad against the pass. You would think this plays into Syracuse being able to win the game. However, that's one game I'm looking at. I have not made my pick yet. I do want to hear yours, as I have about 3 to 4 that I would say are in my finalist of picks. I just haven't decided quite yet.
Stanford, Syracuse is on my list.
Okay.
I like that one. Both teams are scoring a lot of points, but Syracuse is playing awful defense. Stanford is playing okay defense this year. I looked at Michigan State plus 6.5 at Boston College. Boston College can hang with the big dogs. I mean, they looked really good against Missouri last week. And Michigan State's quarterback, Aiden Childs, is a little bit interception happy. He's got 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on the season. So he's 1-to-1 on touchdown. That's not a good ratio. I looked at Kansas State plus 6.5 Kansas State at BYU plus 6.5. But BYU in their one power conference game this year can't score against teams that have solid defenses. I am going with Memphis for the letdown at Navy.
Yeah.
Navy plus 9.5. Navy is playing excellent defense this year. They've given up, I think, 11 points in one game, 12 points in another game, and they've scored 38 and 49 in those 2 games. Navy plays sneaky good defense. So I'm thinking Memphis, coming off of that win against Florida State, is feeling themselves, and they go down.
I don't hate that one. I'll tell you why I'm not going to pick it. I love Seth Hennigan. I think Seth Hennigan's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the country. I do I do understand the point that Navy's a sneaky good team. However, I have a lot of faith in Memphis right now. I have a lot of belief in them. I'm not going to pick that one. It would surprise me if Navy comes out on top. I have seen this one come in on the text line, and we're going to take a break in a minute because we have Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings joining us in the very next segment. However, I have seen USC and Michigan talking about Southern Cal, the real USC. I've seen that one come across the text line several times. That one probably right now is in my top 3. Southern Cal right now is favored by 5 points over Michigan. Michigan being at home, man, that just matters. As much as I like Miller Moss and as good as USC is this year, Michigan being at home, I still believe, even though they do have one loss on the season, I believe that will make a big difference. That's going to be a tough one not to pick, but I'm not going to give my pick in this segment. I'm going to have to come back to you.
Oh, you leaving us in suspense. A texter asks, and we have just a second here, texter, for you. He asks, what are the updated standings for the challenge, where you can find the full list of everyone who has scored in this challenge so far on the Fan Upstate's Twitter. That's at the Fan Upstate. But as of right now, we'll roll you through the first couple. Amazon Guy has 34.5 points. Josh Pate from the Late Kick Show has 32.5. In third place, we've got JT and Greer and Twisted Whisker tied with 22.5. Coach AJ has 19.5. He's in fifth place. In sixth, you got John Dog and Mike Main, both with 18.5 points. In eighth place, Ty Duncan 864, 17.5 points. In ninth place, Buckeye Brian with 16. Tied for 10th, you got Sparty Party 12 and Brandon and Spartanburg with 15.5. Jake Crane of the Crane and Company Show has 15. Fred Savage and Noel in 13th place. Both of them have 14 points. And in 15th place, we've got Sheezy with 13.5. And,
I would imagine that Mississippi State and Florida will continue to be texted in a good bit. I know Gold Rush took that one. I know that Florida's bad. However, Mississippi State's also bad. So Gold Rush, I looked at that game, but these are two bad teams. I know somebody has to win. I just don't know that I have more faith in the Bulldogs than I do right now in the Gators. I did look at it, though, but I'll tell you this. As of right now, total transparency, I have not made my pick. I will make it, and I will give it to you either today or tomorrow or Friday. Wesley Roberts, hope you texted that in on the text line. I see you on Facebook. Make sure you get it in on the text line. We'll talk to Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings next. The Upset Picks Challenge continues, not just today, but tomorrow and Friday during showtime. You can get your text in 71307. Start your text with the word fan. You know, on Wednesdays at 4:20, we talk to Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. If you have a question for him, use the same text line. Keyword fan, get it in right now if you want to know what Kelley Ford is thinking when it pertains to your team. Kelley, thanks for joining us as always. We did see in the AP poll this week, Texas jump Alabama. I don't know what the committee was thinking there. I'm not on the committee. I would assume it's a very thin line that separates the two schools, Alabama and Texas. But when you talk about K Ford ratings, how much of a separation do you have between the Crimson Tide and the Longhorns?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. As always, I appreciate it. And I'll be honest, I really don't even look at the AP poll. Like, I don't know who they have ranked where, why, any of that. To me, the AP poll does not carry a lot of weight. I don't even think voters know, especially early in the season, what are we voting on? Are we voting on, who we think the best teams are, who has the best resume, who we project to have the best resume at the end of the year? I really don't know. So for me, there's two approaches you can take here. One is a power rating standpoint. Which team is better? And right now, I do have Alabama as my number one power-rated team. Texas is number two, but guys, rounded to the nearest tenth of a football point per game, they are tied. Both Alabama and Texas have a K Ford rating right now of 29.6, which means each of these teams is 29.6 points better than the average FBS team if they were to play on a neutral field. So it is very, very tight. There is very little that separates those two from a power rating standpoint. I will say from a resume standpoint, at this point in time, I would give the nod to Texas. I have Texas number 3 in my most deserving rankings. So how much have you accomplished this year relative to what would be expected of the number 12 team playing your schedule? Texas is number 3 behind Northern Illinois and Georgia. Alabama, for me, and most deserving, right now comes in at number 14.
Kelley, from a couple of teams who have impressed to now a team that has depressed its entire fan base, Florida State, still at number 37 in your power rankings, 1 spot behind Memphis, 2 spots ahead of Georgia Tech, both teams that they have lost to. We went back and forth on Texas being in the top 10 a couple of years ago, and I know your ratings are predictive, not resume-based, but what do your numbers see in Florida State, despite the repugnant performances that we've seen thus far, that still has them rated in the top 40?
So I'm glad you asked the question, because you're right. For those that have been listening for a couple of years, it was 2 or 3 years ago now, that late in the year, week 11, 12, 13, my model and many others out there had Texas as a top 10 power rated team, despite at the time 3 or 4 regular season losses. So that's a different case. Texas late in the year, a couple of years ago, from a power rating standpoint, than Florida State right now after 3 games being 0-3. I will tell you that Florida State is only power rated when, what'd you say? I'm looking it up here, number 37 right now. The only reason Florida State is number 37 is because they were number 12 for me in the power ratings to come into the year, and we still have a significant amount of preseason weight assigned to your rating. We can't phase it out fast enough, it seems like, for Florida State. So I will say right now confidently that unless Florida State turns it around and starts performing at a much higher level than they have through their first 3 games, they will continue to plummet in the power ratings. If we removed the preseason weight, the preseason component for this Florida State team is a team that's looking like they're in the 60s or the 70s in the power ratings, certainly not in the top 40. I will also say for Florida State, they are my number 1 biggest underachiever to this point. We expected them to have, more than 2.5 wins at this point of the season. They currently have 0. They have also been downgraded already almost 10 points in the model. That's a massive amount for just 3 games in. They've been downgraded 10 points. It's the second most that any team has been downgraded this year in FBS. So certainly Florida State needs to turn it around. Their fan base at this point has probably given up on the season and the goals that they've had. And a lot of pieces I'd say, hey, it's too early to give it up. They're 0-3, but we haven't started conference play. No, we've started conference play. They're 0-2 in the ACC. The season that Florida State fans were expecting, it's not there. It is a lost cause, and I don't say that lightly after just 3 games.
Kelley, we had a barn burner in Columbia on Saturday here in Gamecock country. JB, one of our Tolos, wants to know, putting you on the spot here, if you can tell the percentage of chance the Gamecocks have of winning 8 games this season despite the loss to LSU.
Absolutely. So this is something I can do with any team every single Monday when the numbers get updated. If I look at the South Carolina team projection tab, which is on the website, k4ratings.com, right now the model is suggesting there is a 13% chance that South Carolina reaches at least 8 regular season wins. So a 13% chance. If we look at their schedule, I've got them as a big favorite, of course, this weekend against Akron, a comfortable favorite at Vanderbilt in week 11 and at home against FCS Wofford in week 13. Outside of that, right now, the Gamecocks are projecting as underdogs in each of their remaining games, but Texas A&M at home and Missouri at home, 2 teams power rated inside the top 16. Both of those right now are projecting as 1-score games. So certainly there's still a path for South Carolina to have a good year, even after what ended up being a disappointing loss. Man, they did play pretty darn well against LSU. I've got a 74% chance to go bowling, a 13% chance to reach at least 8 wins.
His website, kfordratings.com, is your college football cheat sheet. Kelley, how do your ratings look at, or what does it say about teams coming off a bye? And how do you factor in injuries into your model? I'm looking at, NC State, who's got Grayson McCall injured and won't play this week against Clemson.
So these are 2 really important questions. Let's answer the first one first. Coming off of a bye, coming off of an off week, my model does not capture, that's what I call a scheduling dynamic. That's one of the things my model does not capture. So when you're a team that's had additional rest compared to your opponent, certainly as a viewer, as a fan, as a bettor, you're going to account for that and make manual adjustments. The model at this stage does not make that adjustment. That is on my future wish list of things to add into the model. So that's that answer. I do think it's important. I do think that data will show us that if you have more time to prepare than your opponent, you're going to perform better than expected relative to what the model would expect with a equal rest time and equal prep time. With regard to the injuries, if it's a quarterback, you talk about Grayson McCall. If it's a quarterback, I can and do go into the model and manually make an adjustment. Really, any other position at this stage, because I'm doing it for 134 teams and it's a side hobby, it's not my main gig, right? I don't usually make the manual adjustments for injuries except for these extreme cases. Now, injuries do then get implicitly accounted for because the model will say, wow, that NC State offense did not look as good as we thought. Something's going on there if I didn't make an adjustment for an injury to a McCall or somebody like that. And so week over week, it's going to adjust the expectation to the point where if a player misses a significant amount of time, the model is already accounted for. Well, not this player being missing, but this player not playing very well, let's say. And so it's made that adjustment. So quarterbacks, I can manually adjust. Every other position, it gets implicitly factored in over the course of the injury.
Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings joining us right here on the Fan Upstate as he does on Wednesdays at 4:20. Kelley, we know, I said it a minute ago, we're in Gamecock country, but if I don't correct myself, I'll get scolded. We're also in Tiger country as well. Clemson now, one of the favorites in the ACC. When you look at your projected ACC standings, boy, you talk about thin. You talk about close. Miami and Clemson right there neck and neck. What separates the 2?
Yeah, right now they are neck and neck. And if you look at it from a power rating standpoint, I've got Miami at number 8 in the country, and I have Clemson at number 12. If I go to their team sheets, for Clemson, I'll start with the hometown team. I've got them in the top 20 on offense, top 25 on defense. The separator is probably right now in my model, the Miami offense, which I have as a top 10 unit. The defense is also good, coming in at number 16. So for me, it's probably the Miami offense that has been, if I had to pick one unit that separates these 2 teams, it would be that one. It is notable, though, that Clemson does not play Miami. Clemson does not play Boston College, who's a team who has emerged in the ACC as a potential contender here. If you look at the other contender being Louisville, that's a home game for the Tigers in week 10, coming off of an off week. Again, something that we know is important, even if it's not explicitly factored into the model. So the path is there for Clemson. Right now, I've got a 13% chance to win out and finish the year at 11-1, a 45% chance to win at least 10 regular season games, which for my model and what it's suggesting, that's kind of that threshold that Clemson will need to reach to be in that at-large conversation. So certainly Tiger fans should be feeling good about the improvement that they made following the Georgia game with absolutely just wiping the floor with App State. A great performance. This team's been upgraded about 1.5 points since the preseason after a small downgrade after the Georgia game. So Clemson is right there. They're a favorite in every single game remaining. There's only 2 left on the schedule that my numbers even project to be 1 score. That is Louisville, like I talked about, at home. And the next week at Virginia Tech on the road. Of course, that's always a tricky place to play. So those are the 2 games to keep an eye on if you're Clemson fan. If you can avoid stubbing your toe elsewhere, though, I really like this team's chances to at least make it to Charlotte and be in contention for that AQ, but maybe even get one of those coveted at-large spots in the CFP.
At K Ford Ratings on Twitter, we appreciate Kelley Ford joining us here on the Fan Upstate. Artolo JD brings up a really good point that your model can put teams from years past against teams from this year. You know, the narrative is always trying to goat this year's national champion year in and year out as the greatest team that's ever been. Does your model find that to be true, that the best teams are getting better? Or how does it see the last few champs power rated against each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm pulling it up right now because this is not something that I keep published on the website. So certainly, though, I can bring it up and talk through this. If we want to talk about some of the best teams ever in college football, since I'm talking to, a Clemson market here, that 2018 Clemson team for me is probably the best team, or at least one of the best teams of all time playing college football at the highest level. Right now, I have them number 2 in my historical power ratings, only behind 1971 Nebraska. So many people would argue that's really not the modern era. But if I'm looking, at the top power rated teams in recent years, there has been a separation, as I've got the spreadsheet up now in front of me. During the CFP era, we really did see, whether it was Alabama, whether it was Clemson there for a few years under Dabo Swinney, Georgia near the tail end of the 4-team era, we did see a bit of a separation, a bit of a gap from the most elite programs. And I'll say, anywhere between 4 and 6 teams in any given year. Of course, those that I mentioned were year over year there. They were trending to a place where there was a separation of power between them and the rest of college football. What I would say, at least for right now, this year, is that I already talked about Alabama and Texas being deadlocked at number 1 on my power rating. But if you go to Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, even Ole Miss down at number 6, those top 6 teams right now are separated by only about 4.5 points in the power rating. So I don't think there's the same level of separation at the very, very top that we've seen in years past this year, at least right now. Now, there is then a drop from Ole Miss to number 7 a little bit. So, yes, the data does support that. I'm curious to see how the transfer portal era, the increased usage of it, the NIL factor now, and the COVID year still hanging in there, all these changes that are happening, does that reset and kind of balance the powers at the top, or does it allow them to further break away? I think it's too early to say, but this year in particular, we have a grouping of teams that are all very equally power rated, which makes for a fun race.
Kelley, when you look at Georgia, Kentucky on Saturday night, a game that surprised a lot of people, and for a few minutes, it looked as if the Wildcats had a chance. I thought that would impact the most deserving category for the Bulldogs. Which would you say when you have a scenario like that with a highly ranked team who almost loses, almost gets upset to a team that's not ranked, which category does that impact the most?
Yeah, so at this point in the season, that's going to impact the power ratings more, right? So Georgia actually fell about 3 points in the power rating. They went from number 1 to number 4 in my model because of the struggles that they had on the road at Kentucky, a team that I now have power rated number 34. Kentucky, meanwhile, was upgraded about a field goal. They played much better than the model expected. So from a power rating standpoint, that's the change. But from a resume standpoint, a most deserving standpoint, at the end of the day, yes, scoring margin, margin of victory, margin of defeat, that does matter. But what matters most is your win-loss record relative to expected. And for Georgia right now, yes, they have the Tennessee Tech win, FCS team who is not highly power-rated. But you look at the other 2 wins, neutral site against power-rated number 12 Clemson and at now power-rated number 34 Kentucky. There's not, this early in the year, there is not a lot of other resumes out there that are more impressive than what Georgia has. So they actually moved up 1 spot in the resume rankings. They are now number 2 for me behind only Northern Illinois in that metric. So Georgia, yes, it was concerning from a power rating standpoint. They were deducted points and certainly want to see a bounce back there. This is still a top 10 offense. It's still a top 5 defense for me in my model. So we still expect Georgia to be a good team this year, but they are not the runaway favorites that maybe at certain points in the preseason, some, including my own model, were suggesting they might be. So Kentucky certainly showed well, even in a loss. Georgia did not play up to the level that we expected, but they did get the win. And at the end of the day, in a most deserving ranking, that's what's most important.
Kelley Artolo T. Ray asks jokingly if your model factors in poor refereeing. He's a South Carolina Gamecock fan, and he's still bent about a lot of those plays in the LSU game. But another Tolo of ours, Dan B., is a diehard Nebraska fan, and he wants to know the percentages of Nebraska winning either 9 or 10 games, according to your model.
Yeah, give me a second here. I'll pull up Nebraska, who has certainly had a great start to the year. I have them right now in the most deserving at number 27, and they're number 26 in the power ratings. This is a team that's been upgraded about 2 points since the preseason. So certainly liking what it's seeing from the quarterback Raiola there, and with Matt Rule in year 2. Certainly we expect big things next year. Maybe he's even a little bit ahead of schedule. For Nebraska, I think the question was 8 or 9 wins. I've got a 61% chance to win at least 8 games and a 30% chance to win at least 9 games. If you look at the Nebraska schedule, big game on Friday night. Really, really big game. They've got Illinois at home. My numbers do like Nebraska in that game. 67% chance to win. It's a one-score projection, though, so those are kind of toss-up games for me. Rutgers in a couple of weeks is a one-score game. At Indiana, coming off of an off week, is a one-score game. And then to close the year on the road at Iowa, a game that's always on Friday after Thanksgiving, which I absolutely love. That's a one-score projected game too. So only the road trips to Ohio State and USC are currently projecting as larger than one-scored underdogs for Nebraska. So it could be a special year for the Cornhuskers. My model is impressed with what it's seen. The defense is number 3 in the country, and the offense has been better than we thought it was going to be. They're right now at number 70. If they can keep improving that, it could be a great year for the Cornhuskers.
Kelley, we appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you again real soon, man. Great job.
Can't wait. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
That's Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. Always fantastic stuff. However, Diesel, sometimes my brain does hurt after this. I don't know that I can. Hey, I don't know how he does it, man. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, he's got so many variables running through his brain, and he can just pull these things out of the ether. Like, he just kind of knows a lot of this stuff, and especially, you know, when he talks about how much of this stuff just happens automatically now because of the effort that he's put into building his models and his spreadsheets. You know, that he's not having to go in and manually input all of this information.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, I can't. And he's got a full-time job on top of that, working at a college football program, at a college athletics department. So we appreciate Kelley's time week in and week out. Last week, Cole, we saw Arch Manning go on a huge run for a touchdown where he was pulling away from defenders.
Yeah.
And he attributed that speed to a special someone in his life, his mom. And now we know that we have a couple of Tolos in our audience who have achieved great athletic things. I want to know, do we have any Tolos in our audience whose moms have achieved great athletic things? This is a chance for you Tolos to brag on mama. What's the most impressive thing your mom ever did athletically? That's next on the Fan Upstate. You hear that, Tolos? You hear what Voice Over Me just said? Praise and bragging rights for a year if you win the Upset Picks Challenge. We had a Tolo hit us up at 71307. Started his text with keyword fan a couple of minutes ago while we were on the line with Kelley Ford and asked the question, what is Ingles putting in the pot? What kind of prize is Ingles throwing at us this year? Well, there's no prize, Texter. There's no prize for the Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles. You get the satisfaction of being the best Tolo at picking the upsets. And hey, maybe you got a career in handicapping out of it. I don't know. Anything could happen. Well, it's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Texas fans, they thought they had a good one on their hands with Arch Manning. And then it turned out last week, as Arch Manning got the playing time for Texas, they were right. Arch Manning had himself a hell of a day, a hell of a debut as a Texas Longhorn, going for a 67-yard touchdown run, which is just absolutely phenomenal. You know that Texas fans are thinking, ooh, yeah, we really like this Quinn Ewers guy, but we got Arch Manning right behind him, and we're feeling good about Arch Manning right behind him. And when asked where those wheels came from, because when you look up and down the Manning family tree, bunch of slow pokes, right? Peyton was slow. Eli was slow. Arch was slow. Archie was slow. Arch, he's quick. So he said flat out, I got my speed from my mama. All my speed came from mom. And, we got a lot of Tolos on this show who have a history as athletes. We've got former high school athletes in the audience. We've got former college athletes in the audience. As a matter of fact, we had somebody text in earlier this week, Cole, who said he was a former Major League Baseball player. So we got talent right here in the upstate and in our Tolo listening audience. And I don't wonder, do any of our Tolos have athletic mamas like Arch Manning's mom, who maybe passed down some of that talent and athleticism to you?
So when you talk about the speed, I'll do you one even better, Diesel. The 67-yard touchdown score that Arch had that you referenced, right? A very good run. Here's what's fascinating as the texters get in 71307. What if I told you that run that Arch Manning had, Diesel, topped out at 20.7 miles an hour, which was faster than a 80-yard touchdown score in week 1 against the Dolphins by Tyreek Hill.
Wow.
So now Arch Manning, I can say, is faster than Tyreek Hill. Did you ever think I would say those words on the radio? Arch Manning's faster than Tyreek Hill.
How do they calculate that? Is that the distance traveled and the amount of time it took? So like an average speed over the distance that you traveled, or is it max speed? Because then you would have to require all kind of like telemetry data and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know. They probably wear those catapult vests.
That'd be hard to pull off.
It's
Shout
impressive.
out to Arch. We had a texter get in who's being very serious here. Says, my mom could roller skate, and she used to be the one to hit me fly balls and ground balls every day in the offseason for baseball. I wouldn't be the baseball player I am without her. That's sweet, texter. My mom played like high school basketball. I didn't get a ton of athletic prowess from her. I mean, I was always a better fisherman than I was a basketball or baseball player.
I always thought you should have been in the NBA.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I really did.
If only I was a foot and a half taller, I would definitely be in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree with
my
that.
skills.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, speaking of skills, how good are your fighting skills? Well, guess what? We did it last week because we were at Ingles, and we know you, the Tolos, love the 5 o'clock fight. It's back on Wednesdays, and well, lo and behold, Diesel, today's Wednesday. We'll fight next. Tolos, it's time to get in the game. And no, I don't mean the new EA Sports 25. I'm not asking you to spend $800. I'm asking you to get your phones out, get ready to vote, because you have a chance to say who wins and who loses. During football season, we've shaken it up a bit. We have Overreaction Monday. On Tuesdays, we have the Tolo Takeover, which, by the way, was just fantastic yesterday, Diesel, maybe an all-timer. And then Wednesdays. What's today's Wednesday? If you didn't know, if you just woke up, we're doing the 5 o'clock fight. That way Melissa can be involved, and that way you Tolos can still decide who wins and who loses. I love the 5 o'clock Diesel, the 5 o'clock fight, rather. I know you do as well. Let's get right into it.
It's an all-out slugfest, and nobody's leaving unscathed. 3 topics, 1 winner. It's the 5 o'clock fight on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
So, it's been a few days, it's been a week since we've done the 5 o'clock fight. We know that we have a lot of new Tolos each and every day during football season. So I'll explain how this works for you. If you just tuned into the show, maybe you just found us in the last few days, the 5 o'clock fight. There are 3 rounds. Diesel and I must disagree on every single round, and we leave it up to you, the Tolos, to let us know who wins each round. You can text the show 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Also, we're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can watch Wire to Wire, vote in the stream as well. They're chopping it up in the stream right now. Let's get right into it with round 1. Diesel, we know that Florida State has not had the best start to the 2024 season. In fact, they have not had a good start to the 2024 season. The question for round 1 today, for you as well as for me to answer, does Mike Norvell deserve to be fired at the end of the year? Not will he be, but should he be fired?
Yes, Mike Norvell deserves to be fired. Now, I got no reason to think they're going to go on a 9-game win streak and end this season, 9-3. I don't see that as a possibility for this team. They're going to mess up and win a game or 2 against some Sisters of the Poor bereft program that they have no business even sharing the same field with. But this is not going to be a good year. It's going to continue to spiral for Mike Norvell. It's just, remember, we had the audio yesterday of a fire alarm going off during Mike Norvell's press conference. It's just that kind of year where anything and everything that could go wrong has and will go wrong. Look, you got to have a guy at Florida State who can build some semblance of a culture. And there is none at Florida State. Mike Norvell has built no culture at Florida State. I mean, with Bobby Bowden, there was culture. With Mike Norvell, there's no culture. His MO and his culture is portal. Like it's the Mario Brothers, His idea is to do what I always do when I'm playing Mario, is jump off the map, run all the way to the end. And if you play Mario Brothers on Nintendo, you'll know what I'm talking about. Run all the way to the end and skip ahead to level 8. Like that's what Mike Norvell is doing at Florida State. And it ain't going to win you football games. You got to have somebody who can build some culture.
So, Mike Norvell, what's funny is, Diesel, I remember not long ago when the GOAT, Nick Saban, announced that he was stepping away from football. When we all started talking about who was going to replace Nick Saban, we heard names like Kalen DeBoer. We heard names like Gene Chizik. Everybody thought Gene Chizik was going to Alabama, right? Because that made all the. We also heard names like Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell, just a few months ago, was one of the most respected college football coaches in America. Has he had a horrific season? Yes, he has. Has he had an even more horrific quarterback? Yes, he has. Somebody missed the boat on DJ. You need to go get a job. But Mike Norvell, at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. So I'm with you. He needs to win games. However, after what he did last year, after the incredible season that he had, he's shown that he can recruit. He's shown that he can use the portal. He's shown that he can go undefeated, even though they didn't make the college football playoff, even though they're absolutely horrible this year. I say you have to keep him at least one more year to see if he can rebuild the roster that was in 2023. That's round 1. What say you? 71307. Start your text with the word fan.
Cole, I know you're not a huge horror movie fan, but it was in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, where Freddy Krueger drops a TV on some woman's head and says, "Welcome to prime time." You know what? Florida State got welcomed into prime time this year when everybody thought they were going to be this unbeatable juggernaut. DJU was going to come in and fix everything. And they have just had their head rammed through a television set.
They indeed have. I can't push back there. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Who wins round one? We'll get it going with round two. Diesel, this one is fascinating. It's going to make me hungry as well. You brought this one to the table, literally to the table, talking about biscuits or burgers. With all things being equal, and I'll let you tell the story, but what would put you over the top in deciding your portal destination if you're a free agent in college football? All you can eat biscuits or all you can eat burgers? Explain.
So the story behind this is Charles Huff, the head coach at Marshall, who is facing Ohio State this week, 40-point dogs. He said, man, it'd be really nice to have some of those really fast guys from Ohio State to come on down here to Marshall. And he says, if you do, there is an NIL deal in it for you at the local Tudor's Biscuits for all you can eat biscuits all day, every day, no end to the biscuits that you can get. And I looked up Tudor's Biscuits, and the menu is gigantic. I mean, huge. Things that have no business being on a biscuit are on a biscuit on the Tudor's Biscuit menu. So if you were trying to choose between two different schools and all things were equal, the only difference is they got an all-you-can-eat NIL deal at a biscuit joint or an all-you-can-eat NIL deal at a burger joint. Which one would put you over the top? And for me, it's the biscuits. There's a lot more you can do. There's a lot more you could put a cheeseburger on a biscuit if you wanted to. It can be done, but you can't exactly put non-burger things on a burger bun. Doesn't work.
You know, you have to be a breakfast guy, I guess, to answer the way that you did.
Breakfast all day, every day.
And, you know, Diesel, I don't eat breakfast.
Really?
No, I don't. I don't ever eat breakfast. I can't tell you the last time I had breakfast. And because of that, look, if you're asking me all you can eat biscuits or all you can eat burgers, I mean, are you kidding me? What's better than a good burger? Absolutely nothing's better than a good burger. And if I get a burger every day for free, I mean, that is as close to heaven as you can get. I like biscuits, don't get me wrong, but sign me up for the all-you-can-eat burgers. And you know what? Best of luck to Charles Huff, Diesel, who is petitioning to get some of those fast players, as he calls them. I mean, good adjective there, Charles. I mean, yeah, they're a lot faster than your players. You better have a little bit more to throw at them.
Remember, Marshall beat Notre Dame on the road a couple of years ago. What if? Nobody's taken it so far in the Upset Picks Challenge. Oh, for good reason. It's a 40-point spread.
I was going to say, what, 30?
Yeah, it's 40.
All right, round one, round two in the books. That leaves one more.
Final round. Fight.
Diesel, you were not here on Monday, so we have not had a chance to hash this out. This may turn into 2 segments, 3 segments, 4 segments. Who knows? This may go all the way up until 7 o'clock. However, the million-dollar question that I have for you, is it okay for South Carolina Gamecock fans to blame the officials for Saturday's loss to LSU?
Hell no. You whiny-ass Gamecock fans need to remember that you shot yourselves in the foot a lot down the stretch in that football game. You looked really good a lot in that football game, and you also looked really bad a lot of times in that football game. You were up 17 points at one point in that football game. You jumped off sides on a 4th down. You had 2 false starts in the last 5 minutes. That's not on the refs. That's on you. One of those pick six, the penalty called was a little iffy. The other one was called back legitimately. So it ain't on the refs, South Carolina. You just didn't play clean enough when it really mattered. It's on you.
So I said on Monday that I hate being the guy that blames the refs, but I was going to be that guy on Monday. And look, nothing has changed my mind one bit, Diesel. I'm still going to be that guy. South Carolina Were they up 17-0? Yes. They got hosed on Saturday. And I mean hosed. You go back and you find the pass interference on the offensive pass interference call. You tell me why a quarterback can act as a defender, but you can't block him. Oh, hosed. Hosed is a word to put it lightly. The Gamecocks, did they have self-inflicting penalties and wounds? Sure. They did have a 17-point lead. However, just like I said on Monday, it wasn't a 17-point lead against a nobody. It was a 17-point lead against a very good LSU team who we knew was going to come back. They weren't going to lay down. They didn't. However, the stupid Zebras got involved, and they decided that game, in my opinion.
So Shane Beamer reached out to the SEC to talk to the head of officials with the SEC over the week, and he said he asked for some clarification on a bunch of the calls. He says that he sent them a handful of plays that he wanted looked at. He wanted explanations of, some of which he agreed with, some of which he still patently disagrees with, and some he realizes he's in an agree to disagree scenario with those. So even Shane Beamer kind of, looks at some of those plays and says, I didn't like the call at the time, but I understand why they made the call that they called.
Yeah, look, I appreciate Shane for sending them in. I think I said this on Monday. The worst part of these situations, Diesel, when you send film in, what are they going to do? There's nothing they can do.
They're not going to go back
right?
and change anything.
They can't change the outcome. The officials, in my opinion, have zero accountability. They can do whatever they want. They work on wood and make crafts during the day, and they officiate as a hobby on the weekend, so they suck. And I'm not a South Carolina Gamecock fan. You'd think I was, but I'm telling you, man, I don't know how in the world you can stomach that if you're a Gamecock fan. That was atrocious. I went back and watched the bad calls, and they're even more difficult to watch.
You ever heard the saying, leave no doubt?
Yeah.
When you're playing in a tight football game,
the refs left no doubt.
When you're playing against a team that on paper you should lose to and you're beating, you got to leave no doubt whatsoever. You can't make boneheaded mistakes. You can't jump off sides. You can't give them opportunities, because that's how those games, like you and I have watched enough football that we know that good teams don't stay down for the entire game. They may play a bad first half. They may play a bad first three quarters, but good teams that have the talent, they somehow always find a way to come back and win games that they've played badly in. And South Carolina just let LSU off the hook, a lot of which was by their own volition.
I'm telling you, man, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm so mad about it. And I'm not even a Gamecock fan. We'll do a recap, but we got to close it first.
Submit your topics to Diesel at thefanupstate.com. Subject line fight on the Fan Upstate.
So if you just tuned in, quick recap. Round one, does Mike Norvell deserve to be fired? Diesel says, yes, he does. I say, no, you got to give him one more year. Round two, all things being equal, what would put you over the top in deciding your portal destination? All you can eat biscuits or all you can eat burgers? They had a situation at Marshall where this is a real situation. A real situation. We'll get back to that. That's crazy. A lot of biscuits going out the door for free up there. Round three. Is it okay to blame the officials for Saturday's loss to LSU? Diesel says, no, you blew a 17-point lead. I say, you blame the officials all you want, because that was atrocious. What say you? 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Who's winning so far, Diesel?
Are you, before we get there, are you Gamecock whiners telling me that you went back and you watched this game and there was not a single call that an objective football fan or a non-objective LSU fan would say, we got hosed on that call? No, because you don't do that, right? When you think the refs screwed you, you only go back and look for things that you don't like that went against you. You never go back and look at the things, the questionable spots, the penalties. You never go back and look at that and say, oh, well, that could have affected the game as well. You guys need to stop whining and grow up. Play a better brand of football than that.
See, I totally disagree, and I'll tell you why. When you talk about 14 points coming off of the board, like, we're not talking about a false start on 2nd and 4 in the third quarter, right? we know, I know, refs suck. They're human. They're going to be good. They're going to be bad. They are human beings. However, man, like, how do you have such impactful calls happen 3 times in a row? And by the way, you take 14 points off the board.
The first one was a horse collar on the pick six. You can't do that.
Well,
you know full well you can't do that.
That's not
that
one
was
of the ones that I had
call.
an issue. Yeah, that was, you know what?
That was the pick six. That's part of what you just said.
The one pick six with a horse collar. I didn't think it was a horse collar. I thought he grabbed jersey. The second pick six, when the quarterback is now going for a tackle, Diesel, my opinion, and I don't understand how this is not very clearly defined in the rule book, but when the quarterback throws a pick, that idiot made a mistake by throwing a pick. Now he's going to make a tackle. So all of a sudden we have to put this big crown of thorns on him that we can't touch him because he threw a – no, that's BS. I want to knock his you-know-what off. I mean, like, there's no way the quarterback should have this elegant, mystic
halo around
halo. You can't touch me. Man, that makes me so mad. I hate being that guy, but I'm that guy until I can see otherwise.
So the text line is popping on this already. The stream is a little bit lagging behind. We go to Wesley Roberts. He says, Cole, Diesel. That's round 1 and 2 for you, round 3 for me. He says, I think Norvell deserves one more chance after last season. Let's see here. JD says, Diesel sounds like Singletary. We had them and we let them off the hook. They are who we thought they were. Let's see here. Madcraft says Cole wins round 1 and 2. He says I win round number 3.
And I need a. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
JD says the rule says that a quarterback can't be horse collared in the pocket. They only get that availability once leaving the pocket, and it was all jersey.
Yeah, there's a little bit of on that call in particular. There's a little bit of gray area, and again, like. A lot of calls have been made in the past on a horse collar where it is the horse collar. Some have been made where it's jersey. It needs to clearly define it, in my opinion. Oh, to the text line. Goodness gracious.
A lot of text.
Where do we even start on the text line?
We got to start with, I don't even see who the name on this one is, but it's Texter says Diesel wins round 1 because Norvell just went 13-0, and it's 0-4 cents. Cole wins round 2 because I eat bacon, egg, and cheese on a hamburger bun all the time. He asks who wins round 3. Says, gosh, splitting hairs here, but Cole wins. There were so many calls against us that changed the game. The ones on LSU weren't as bad.
They weren't as bad. I mean, they weren't.
Weren't as bad or they weren't as impactful?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Hey, like there are plays all the time. There was not that it mattered in the game because it was already over, but there was a touchdown run for App State against Clemson where the right guard held somebody once the running back was already past him and around him, yet they called the play back because there was a holding penalty. You could say, well, that hold didn't actually affect the play because it occurred after the running back had already gotten past the edge, but that doesn't matter. That's not the rule of the game. You don't situationally say, well, it's holding because the runner, the ball carrier was already beyond, and that's not part of that's just the rules.
The thing I said Monday that reigns more true for me on anything that anyone believes is the amount of Clemson fans that we had texting in on Monday. I'm a Clemson fan, but they got hosed. That was all I needed to see. Clemson fans were even coming to their defense. 508 Diesel goes round 1 Diesel, round 2 Diesel, round 3 Diesel. This is Tyler B. He says Cole
loses.
Cole loses every fight from here on out every week for not being a breakfast guy. I'm sorry. I'm not a breakfast guy. I never have been.
I got to eat a good breakfast.
Reed Atkins. I think Cole wins 3 zip. It's a clean sweep. The glory days of Diesel being in the 5 o'clock fight are over. God, that happened fast, didn't it?
Yeah.
The tides have shifted.
You skipped this one. It says Diesel has just lost every argument from here to eternity because of that DA take on the refs not stealing the game from South Carolina.
Well, Texter, we can't agree. It's no fun if we agree. Corn Chip, I'm giving Diesel the win today. Refs never made a mistake. Former umpire. That's a good one. You're right. They've never made a mistake. Let's see. Trey in Kentucky says Cole round 1, Diesel round 2, Cole round 3. Texter says Cole in a landslide for number 3 alone. Hopefully the Gamecocks are on my side.
Bitter.
I think the Gamecocks are voting me in today, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. 618. I don't like South Carolina, but they got screwed in that game, and everybody can see that the refs started making all those penalties after they went. Let me click on the text. Went up 17-0, and I believe there was at least 12 of them in the game. Notre Dame Nate. Appreciate you, Notre Dame Nate. Notre Dame. Oh, excuse me. This is a different texter. Round 1, Diesel. Round 2, Diesel. Round 3, not Diesel, from a Clemson fan.
Nice.
South Carolina had the chance to tie the game and choked. Quit crying, says a texter. Maybe a Clemson fan. I don't know there. 828 says Diesel. Cole Diesel. So you did get the win there. Jarrett Tripp says Cole for the sweep. Rick and Greer says Diesel sweep. You must have bought Diesel's or Rick's 35 cents worth of gas today. That's why he gave you the win. Mike Main. I'm going to act like an SEC ref right now, even though I think Diesel wins. Cole gets the sweep. That's pretty good.
I'm going to send a letter to the head of officials of the SEC. We're going to talk about that and figure out what really happened on that one. When we come back, Cole, who are you tired of in sports? Who have you just had enough of in the sports world? That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. A lot of entries coming in on the Upset Picks Challenge. Matt J taking Georgia Tech over Louisville plus 10. Lefty Tiger wants NC State plus 20.5 over his Tigers. How about that? I don't think he thinks NC State stands a chance of winning that game. But he wins either way, brother. Either his Clemson Tigers win the game.
Wow.
Or he gets 20.5 points in the Upset Picks Challenge.
That's bold.
Smart choice, Lefty Tiger. Reed Atkins taking Georgia Tech plus 10 over Louisville. We got JT and Greer, who's taking Cal plus 2.5 over Florida State. Falcon Jeremy and Notre Dame Nate both want Oklahoma plus 7 over Tennessee.
Plus 2.5.
Clemson Oculus wants BYU plus 7.5 over Kansas State. Tyler B wants Mississippi State plus 6 over Florida. Those are the recent entries into the Upset Picks Challenge that we've got over 40 entries already today.
Let's go.
Making this challenge so huge, the biggest it's ever been, the most number of unique entrants we've ever had for the Upset Picks Challenge. And we got to thank you, the Tolos, for being a part of it, and Ingalls Markets for being a big part of that as well. Cole, we all have those people in sports, in media, wherever, that we're just tired of dealing with. For some of y'all, it might be me. It might be Cole. Enough with those two idiots on the radio, especially Dewey. That's the way Dewey feels. Yeah, he says we should be fired. But who is it in sports that you're just tired of? You're tired of hearing about. You're tired of dealing with. You're tired of them maybe victimizing your team. Who is that for you? For me, right now, it is the Kelsey brothers, and specifically Jason Kelley and Kelsey. Those guys blew up out of nowhere. I understand that they're both phenomenal football players, and I understand that they are good at doing their podcasts, but you can't turn on anything without seeing a Kelsey brother anymore. They're on every single, they're on wrestling. They're in the background at games that they're not even playing in. They're just everywhere. Nobody will shut the hell up about their podcast. I'm done with the Kelsey brothers. And I think it's just, to me, it's just a product of over marketing them in a very, very quick amount of time. Slow down. Okay. Take some time. You just finished playing, Jason. Now, I don't need you out there throwing beers at fans, dancing in a green velour tracksuit. You look like an idiot. You look like a clown, and you look like you're just chasing clout. I'm done with you.
So I don't disagree with that. I'm not a big fan of the Kelseys either. However, I can't stand it every single time they're throwing in our face. However, the sad part is somebody must like them. Somebody somewhere must like them.
Somebody somewhere knows that they can make money off of them.
And they do. And look, I'm not a fan of either one of them. I would probably choose Jason over Travis if I had to.
If you had to deal with one of them?
If I had to deal with one of them. Oh, no, if I had to deal with one. If I get rid of is Travis. Get rid of Travis 100%, as well as Taylor. Get rid of both of them.
What did Taylor Swift ever do to you?
I just don't like Taylor Swift. Never have. Never have liked Taylor Swift.
Not even when she was a country singer?
No.
You'd have been
hey, no.
You'd have been 15 years old.
No.
And there was a 17, 18-year-old Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I'm good. I'll pass on that. But that's a good entry. I think my tired of in sports, I think I'm finally getting there. I think we're finally getting to a solution. Skip Bayless is the absolute worst for me. And I believe that we're finally
You just read the last text?
Yes. Sorry.
Texter, you got both of us to laugh.
Literally mid-thought. And I don't even remember what I was saying.
Skip Bayless.
Skip Bayless.
Is it because he kept smacking around your Dallas Cowboys?
Well, no. I think it was. I think Skip Bayless, just for whatever reason, was in this persona of being not just a troll, but a troll that's hated, makes no sense. I didn't like what Skip Bayless did with not just Shannon Sharp, but with a lot of people in making things personal. I thought he made things way too personal. And, man, I'll tell you this. I'm so glad to see Skip Bayless gone off of Fox. I hope we never have to see him again.
Texter Wesley Roberts on the stream. He's watching us on Facebook right now. By the way, you can find our live video stream on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Just search for The Fan Upstate. We'd appreciate it if you gave us a like, a follow, or a subscription wherever you are. Wesley Roberts says, I'm tired of Gamecock fans crying about refs. It's been going on 5 days too long.
But Wesley, if it were Clemson, you would be crying as well, right? Like, let's be objective. If Clemson had the same calls
Clemson, they wouldn't get the bad calls. It's Clemson.
But I'm just saying, like, you have to be somewhat objective here.
Madcraft says, easily Paul Feinbaum. It will always be until he retires or someone unplugs his mic. Madcraft, you're not wrong there. Paul Feinbaum.
You like Paul?
Paul Feinbaum is a master at talking season, of saying inflammatory things that get under people's skin. He is a troll operating at the highest levels of sports because he knows, like, people in the SEC will agree with him most of the time. But when he talks about a team outside of the SEC, when he talks about Dabo, when he talks about what's his name out at Southern Cal,
Riley.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley. He knows that he's going to get a rise out of those fans, which is just going to bring more and more people to his show. I mean, he is the best, really, in this business.
You know, I don't
trolling
hate Paul.
Live on the air.
I like Paul. I do.
You do?
I like Paul. I really do. I think Paul's in like I don't want to say Paul has a lazy or an easy job, but just imagine this, Diesel, for a second. Rick, we'll get to you in just a few minutes.
He has to know just enough to piss off other fans.
But think about it. Paul Feinbaum literally represents the biggest conference, the most passionate fan bases, and all he has to do is say one or two things. And like you said a minute ago, one or two things he says, and all of a sudden the entire conference is behind him. And he says something bad about Dabo, and they're putting an exclamation stamp on it, right? I'm not saying he's just full of lazy takes, but even go a step further. What is Paul Feinbaum his show known for? The callers.
Yeah.
What does he actually do that, like, does he talk ball? No. Does he give analysis? No. He hates, he pumps up the SEC, and he trolls on the ACC.
Sounds a lot like the show that comes on right before we go on the air. Jim Rome doesn't talk a whole lot of ball either. Yet it's one of the most popular shows in all of sports media.
I don't know that Jim's ever talked ball.
Right. He'll do an interview every now and again, bring on a coach and ask some good questions. I think he's a great interviewer.
Sure.
But he knows, I mean, like, let's be real, Cole. There's 1,000,001 shows that talk ball, right? That's why I can't stand people who call themselves knower of ball. Yeah, who gives a rip what you think about ball? Are you an elite head coach at any point in your career? Have you ever been an elite head coach? Well, then you don't know ball. You're just a guy who thinks he knows balls because you sit on your couch on your ass a lot and watch a lot of ball.
Wesley Roberts says, all jokes aside, my top three are Stephen A. Smith, Paul Feinbaum, and Colorado football. All three are such attention seekers. I'll also go a step further, and I know everybody in the audience will probably disagree with me. I'm a huge Stephen A. fan. I am a huge fan of Stephen A. Smith.
I'm with this texter here who says, I don't enjoy the argument style sports people.
See, I love it.
I don't want to wake up first thing in the morning. Like, I'm feeling good, right?
Yeah.
I've woken up. I'm sitting down to have my coffee. I don't want to hear two people screaming at each other first thing in the morning.
All right.
It's instant turnoff.
We got to go
I'm
to
with
break
you on this, Stephen A.
For Chris Phillips coming up shortly, but Rick in Greer wants to chime in. What's up, Rick?
Let me tell you who I hate. I hate Shaquille O'Neal. His big head is on everything. Coffee, pizza, underwear now. I can't turn on the TV without Shaquille O'Neal being on the TV. Get your 7-foot ass off the TV, okay? Thank you.
Who hates Shaquille O'Neal? The guy, like, literally goes to Walmart's and buys out the entire layaway
We just
section.
found one person.
He's such a nice guy.
We just found one person
Rick,
that does.
Come on.
That is fantastic. Thanks for the call, Rick. Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, next. Your upset picks in. 7 o'clock today is when the challenge will end as of today. Pick it back up tomorrow during showtime and then again on Friday. But on Wednesdays at this very time, we bring on Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. The discussion the last 3 days, Chris, and including the 5 o'clock fight just a few moments ago with Diesel and I, has been, is it okay for South Carolina fans, who I know you love and adore, to blame the refs for Saturday's loss? What say Chris Phillips?
First things first, guys, appreciate you having me on. Here's what I have to say about it. On Wednesday, September the 18th, more than 72 hours after the end of the game, it's time to build a bridge and get over it, boys. I don't really want to talk about refs anymore. I'll be totally transparent with you, and I don't really want to hear fans talk about it either. I mean, I had a very unpopular take early in the week, and that's totally fine. You guys know I embrace that. The referees were not good in the game on Saturday. Okay, I was there in person. The personal foul on Garrett Nussmeier was one on the interception, the pick six. In person looked a lot worse. I thought immediately when I saw it, that's a flag. They're going to throw that every time. The quarterback got decked. When I went back and watched the replay, it didn't look nearly as bad as it looked in person. That is a flag I would have liked to have seen the refs keep in the pocket. There's no question. Guys, the refs are not why South Carolina lost. They're just not. Maybe it's the way I'm wired. I was stunned when I got on social media after the game immediately following, because I didn't have a lot of service in the stadium or whatever. So I got on at the game. I was stunned people were solely blaming the refs when there were so many other opportunities for South Carolina to take control of that game and win the football game. So I would say no. I don't think you should be blaming the refs solely. And it's 72 hours, more than that later. It's time to get over it, guys. Like, South Carolina could have won the game. They were at home up 17-0. They should have won the game. The refs were a piece of it, sure, but there are controllables and there are uncontrollables in life and in sports, and you got to worry about the things you can control. And there were a lot of controllables that South Carolina did not take advantage of, and that thus cost them the game.
Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered joining us here on Wire to Wire, the fan upstate. Chris, Florida is proving that nothing mobilizes people like hatred and disgust. Boosters got together. They pledged the $28 million to get rid of Billy Napier, weighing the pros and cons of making a move mid-season. You lose the locker room if you keep them, and then you lose players if you move on from them in the transfer portal. Where do you land on what Florida should do, and when should they do it?
Well, Diesel, a lot of it will come down to what they may have to do, right? If they lose to Mississippi State this weekend, I don't know that they're really going to have much of a choice. Now, the one thing I will say is that apparently, and I think this was from a report I saw earlier this week, but apparently there is a lot more, obviously, urgency from the fan base and those outside the program to move off Billy Napier than there is inside the program, because Billy Napier, believe it or not, actually still has a lot of buy-in in that locker room. Like, this isn't a situation where it's a fragmented culture and guys don't want to play for him. Like, I think most of the guys in that locker room actually like Billy Napier and believe in Billy Napier. And, it's kind of a Will Muschamp situation, right, guys? Where, like, players really liked him and they played for him. Those teams weren't very good, and thus he ended up, getting fired. So, listen, you keep losing games. I do think it's a situation to where I don't know if Mississippi State would be the game where he's fired by Monday. That could come a few weeks later against UCF, although it would make a lot of sense if they were to lose to the Bulldogs, that you've got a bye week upcoming. You could, because I think, guys, there's just a lot to figure out behind the scenes. And I think that's why they haven't made a move yet in regards to, okay, well, who's going to be hiring the next football coach? Who's the interim going to be, right? Like, that's a question I don't know that they have an answer to yet. So it's a really tricky situation down in Gainesville, and it only gets more difficult if you keep losing games, especially, if you lose to Mississippi State, who just got blown out by Toledo. I would not be surprised if he was out by next Monday.
Chris, to stay right there with Florida here for one more second, you retweeted a video of Urban Meyer saying that ship has sailed, asked if he would come back, as disgraced as he's been since he left. If you put it on a simple Twitter poll, yes or no, do you want Urban Meyer back? What percentage of Florida fans would you say really would want Urban Meyer back?
I think most would take him back in a heartbeat. I'd probably put it 75-25. Probably say they want him back because of, maybe the disgraced exit. He's a heck of a football coach. You know what I mean? Like, this is a guy that the last national titles, the last really, really great Florida teams were with him at the helm. So if he had the desire to come back, I think the fan base would rally around it and would absolutely say yes. And I even think the 25% that I may have put in the no, I think they could very, very easily come around to it if he, if he was motivated to take the job, but he's not. I believe Urban Meyer when he says that ship has sailed, he's done. I don't see it happening. So I would strike Urban Meyer's name off the list if I were a Florida fan.
Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. Chris, very simple question for you. Simply put, in your opinion, is the Florida job a top 5 job in the conference?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question, Cole, because it's right there on the fringe line, I think. Right now, I'd probably put it at 6, just outside of the top 5, because now we add Texas and Oklahoma, right? So I would think of Georgia, Texas, LSU, Alabama, and then it's like, who's in that 5 spot? Is Tennessee a better job right now? I think right now Tennessee is a better job, guys, because leadership is a lot better. Like, you have Danny White, your AD, and you look at what Tennessee's doing. I give them a lot of credit. I feel like they're at the forefront of a lot of this NIL stuff and just the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. So it's right there, Cole, to your point, in that 5-6 kind of range. Some would say Texas A&M is a better job than Florida, even though they haven't won national titles because of endless resources. But I'll say it's just outside of the top 5 right now, just because of the uncertainty in leadership. Because I think once they fire Billy Napier, I don't see Scott Strickland coming back either. And they've got uncertainty with their president. So you're only as good as your leadership, guys. And I think Florida is lacking that well beyond the football coach right now.
Chris, what's been the Tennessee fans' reaction to this 10% surcharge for talent fee on tickets? And you're a finger on the pulse kind of guy in the SEC and among those fan bases. What's been the reaction from other fan bases where this hasn't been floated yet? We understand that they've mentioned it at South Carolina, but it's not being implemented at South Carolina yet. What are other schools and fans saying about that if it were to come to them?
Well, Diesel, I'll start with Tennessee fans. It's incredible what winning does, right? Like, winning cures all. And so from what I get from Tennessee fans, they don't mind at all because the product's so good, right? They're like, hey, we're winning. We're winning. I'll gladly pay 10% more to continue to funnel into my program to take care of the players. And now, if you're at a place that's not winning, right, if you're struggling and then you implement a talent fee, well, people are going to be upset. There's going to be some griping and some moaning. But what I'm picked up, Diesel, like, I don't think Tennessee fans, from the comments I've seen, I don't think they care. They're like, the product is that good. I'm more than happy to pay a little bit extra because I know I'm getting my money's worth. Honestly, I think it's a great idea. I think fans across the SEC, there's very, very mixed emotions. I mean, anytime price goes up in any capacity, whether this is sports related or not, you're going to have a lot of mixed reactions, even if it's for good cause, right? People just don't like paying more money for things, especially when they're already paying a certain price for something and then it's just going up kind of out of nowhere. People don't like change in any regard, certainly in this way as well when it hits your wallet. But, I think it really depends, man, what your product looks like on the field. I think it's a genius move because, listen, you're already going to the games and you got to get creative when it comes to NIL, guys, because a lot of fans don't like the idea of just kind of blindly giving to their favorite team's collective and blindly donating. You don't know and you don't really know, you don't feel confident in saying, like, I know I'm getting my bang for my buck. I know where my money's going. Like, I know I'm getting a return on my investment. At least when you're doing it this way, hey, you're already going to games, like you're paying for your tickets. You're going to the game. You're getting the experience of the game. Now, you can't guarantee whether your team's going to win or lose, but you're getting the experience of the game, something that you love obviously doing, and you're helping out your favorite team in the process. So, listen, there's going to be a lot of people that don't like the increase in ticket prices, and I don't blame them. But I would answer your question, Diesel, just by saying that for the programs that are winning, hey, it's worth every penny. For the programs that are kind of mid-tier where it's like, like Mississippi State's probably going to have a hard time asking their fans to pay a 10% talent fee right now, right? Like that may not be as well received in Starkville as it is in Knoxville, but I do think it's a smart idea.
Chris, 20 seconds or less. We're up against it. Chris Phillips, upset pick for this week.
Give me Georgia Tech over Louisville,
Ooh,
plus 10.5. I like the Jackets. I doubted them against Florida State. I won't do it again, man. I think Georgia Tech steals one at Louisville.
I like that. Thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good one.
Make sure you give him a follow at SEC Unfiltered, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. He is all over the place. He's crushing it as he has expanded his reach to all of the SEC. When we come back, we'll get back into this upset picks challenge, get to some picks that have just come in, and try to invite you one more time for the day to get your upset picks in. That's coming up next. Almost 50 picks from you Tolos in already on this very first day of the week 4 Wire to Wire Upset Picks Challenge. Now, it is a week-to-week challenge. You're trying to stay on the board of Tolos who have scored points, but it's also a season-long challenge. That's why you can't really strategize and pick the 2.5 point Cal upset over Florida State, which I think most of us assume is probably going to happen. Like, Florida State sucks. If you're just trying to get on the board, that's not a bad choice, but you're certainly not going to catch up to Amazon Guy and Josh Pate, who are running away with the Upset Picks Challenge here in 2024. This challenge brought to you by Ingles Markets, and of course, we appreciate their involvement and their participation in making this thing the biggest and best Upset Picks Challenge we've ever had here on the Fan Upstate. I want to invite you Tolos who haven't yet gotten in your upset pick to text it to us, 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Send us your name, your game, and the spread. So here's how your text should read. I'm going to make this up. Your name is John. John, text in 71307. The first word of your text is fan. And the reason for that is we share a text line with our sister station. And if you put the word fan on it, it comes directly to us. It filters directly to us. If you don't, it goes to them over on the other side of the hallway. So you got to put the word fan on there. And then you would say Cal plus 2.5 versus Florida. My name is John. And then that would be a valid pick. You got to give us your name, your game, and the spread. We had a Tolo who was brand new to this challenge earlier messaging in. Hadn't gone back and found out. I can't remember who that was off the top of my head. He, for the very first time ever being in this challenge, got his pick in on the stream. We want you to text them in so that all of our picks are going to the same place.
And your pick, remind me, I'm still making mine, but your pick was?
My pick was Navy plus 9.5 at home hosting Memphis. And the reason why I went with that pick, and I looked at a couple of different games, and picking the upset picks challenge is hard. You know, you're never going to win picking the games that are 55% chance to win for one team and 45% chance to win for the other team, because those are going to be like the 1.5 point spreads, right? You're never going to win this thing picking those games. You gotta stretch a little bit. So you're in ESPN FPI chance to win 30% territory. And I like this game a lot. Number one, because Navy is like that kind of weird streaky team that every 4 or 5 years will pop up and be really good. And they'll just have like this really uber disciplined team. I mean, they're all soldiers, right? They're all in the military, heading off to fight for our country one day. But they always play really disciplined defense, and they are doing that in spades this year. They have 2 games where they've given up less than 14 points, and they're playing really good offense. They're scoring a lot, 38 and 49 in their 2 games. So I think Memphis might be riding a little bit high off of their win over Florida State last week, and Navy at home is going to get them.
You know, I've seen
on the board.
I've seen a few Georgia Tech, Louisville picks on the text line 71307. I really wanted to pick Georgia Tech over Louisville. However, I'm not. It was one of the ones I was eyeing. Georgia Tech, even though I'm not picking them, there are a few things when you look at the statistics, there are a few things that may lead you to believe that picking Georgia Tech over Louisville would be the right decision. Georgia Tech has hit the money line in 4 of their last 6 away games. Pretty good odds. Georgia Tech have covered the spread in 10 of their last 14 games. Again, not on the road, not home, but 14 total games. Georgia Tech's covered the spread, which has given them a chance to win the game. Louisville has covered the spread in 7 of the last 10. So this game, when you're looking at it, it's a 10-point spread. Louisville favored. You know, if we were picking just the spread, I'd feel pretty confident, Diesel, to say I like Georgia Tech to cover the spread and keep this game close. However, there's not enough there for me to take Georgia Tech, who's 1-4 in the, I'm looking at some of these stats, like 1-4 when being a 10-point favorite in the last 3 years, 10-4 when allowing less than, these amount of yards per. I just can't buy into the Georgia Tech hype yet. I've seen them beat some teams. However, the teams that they've beaten haven't turned out to be very good. So I can't pick that one. I do think Louisville is going to be one of the better teams in the country. So, I don't hate your pick. I also don't hate Chris Phillips's pick. And, I'm looking at the games. I just hadn't found one yet. Hadn't found one.
Okay, and that's fine. You take all the time you need. Some of us
may have one.
Late bloomers. It's okay.
Yeah, it's
right. Okay to take your time on this. I would say that Georgia Tech plus 10 over Louisville is, if it's not the most popular choice, it's pretty close.
Second or third.
Yeah. We've had quite a few people taking Southern Miss over Jacksonville State. That one's +6 for Southern Miss. We've got quite a few people taking James Madison over North Carolina. Josh Pate, who's doing really well in this challenge, he's taking BYU +7.5 against Kansas State.
Ooh.
Jake Crane, he's taking James Madison over UNC. Shane Connick taking Georgia Tech over Louisville.
Can't do it.
Chris Phillips taking Georgia Tech over Louisville. Melissa Level of Ingalls, she's going big and bold. And I even tried to talk her out of this pick.
Yeah.
I tried to talk her out of it. She's taking NC State +20.5 over Clemson. I said, that Grayson McCall is out, right?
Yeah. Freshman quarterback.
She said, yeah, but NC State's a good football team, and they're not going to allow themselves to be punked against Clemson. And we don't really know who Clemson is yet. Because they played, vastly different types of teams, which the thought process, the logic is there.
Yeah.
And even when Grayson McCall was playing for NC State the last couple of weeks, he hasn't looked great either. So, it's hard for me to tell Melissa. I'd never tell her this to her face. It's hard for me to tell her she's
crazy.
Making a dumb pick. She's making a dumb pick.
Hey, Scotty from BMW also riding with Chris Phillips and a lot of others taking Georgia Tech over Louisville. Scotty from BMW texted the show just a few minutes ago. Philip Rollins says NC State +20.5. There's another one. I can't do it. I cannot do it. A freshman quarterback on the road. There's no way.
We've had such a pendulum swing on Dabo Swinney this season. I mean, all off season, we were down on Dabo saying, the win total is down. You didn't hit your 10 wins thing that you love to talk about so much. Portal, NIL, all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. And then they get their asses handed to them in the first game of the season against Georgia. Blowout loss, looked completely inept on offense. Very different story in week 2. They blew out App State, made them look very inept on defense. And just this pendulum swing back. It's the I told you so's are just ping-ponging back and forth. Who gets to tell you I told you so? We were telling I told you so's after week 1 when you lost to Georgia. And then those fans on the opposite side were getting to do the I told you Garrett Riley would get it right. I told you Cade Klubnik had the touch. I told you this offense was going to be really good. So we don't really know who this Clemson team is.
All right, I got mine. I've got mine.
Okay.
I just got it. I've been
marking
looking
it down.
I'm telling you, this one's interesting. I'm not swinging for the fence here.
Okay.
But this team that I'm picking against Diesel is 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 games, which means in the last 7, they haven't covered the spread. They haven't beaten the teams like they were supposed to. This team that I'm picking against comes into this matchup with a perfect 3-0 record at home. They'll be looking for their 4th straight win, home field advantage, right? However, the first 2 games against Campbell and New Mexico State for this team weren't quite impressive. The team I'm rolling with nearly beat a very good App State team last week. Their offense disappeared after the first quarter. I know there was some shaky offense the rest of the game, but I'm picking East Carolina on the road at Liberty, who hasn't been tested. -6 is what it says right now. I don't know what it was at 3:00 today.
So you're taking East Carolina +6
Give me
at
ECU.
Liberty. I looked at that game.
Did you?
Honestly, I did. Garcia, the quarterback at East Carolina, he's very interception happy.
Yeah.
Throws a lot of picks. But I got to think that Liberty under Jamie Chadwell just doesn't have the horses to play against teams that are slightly more talented than them. Liberty, they play the worst schedule in college football, and I'm not making that up. You look at the rankings. They are playing the easiest schedule in college football for the second year straight. And somehow, some way, whether it's they're good or whether it's that they're playing nobodies, they skated through last year, and thus far they're skating through this year. I mean, I want East Carolina to go on. I've never rooted for the Pirates, not one in my life.
You are today?
But I want East Carolina to go on the road and absolutely murder the Liberty Flamers.
Wesley Roberts says, you're going to regret that, Cole. Diesel, to your point, Jake Garcia, quarterback for ECU, 5 touchdowns to 8 interceptions.
Yeah, he throws a lot of picks. How
many yards? Let's see, 870. He's throwing the ball a lot. I'm going to tell you why I'm going with him. One reason. This is a terrible reason to go with the team. I'm pulling for the running back. I'm pulling for Rajay Harris of Duncan, former Burns Rebel, 253 yards on the season, 2 touchdowns. He's their guy. He's their workhorse. He is a running back that Liberty has not had to see yet. I do believe, though, ECU plays a little bit more of a bullish brand of football, physical brand than Liberty does. I think, 6-point spread. I'll be interested to see if that line moves, because I thought that game would be Diesel. I thought Liberty would be favored by like 10. I thought they'd be favored by 10, maybe 11 points. It being 6 surprises me. It wouldn't be a huge win for my upset picks, but give me ECU on the road at Liberty.
I tell you, if ECU doesn't get this win, or if they get blown out on the road, Mike Houston is in a tough spot. I mean, Houston was really good at James Madison. There's a reason why he moved up. He was winning a lot of games when they were FCS. He got the job at East Carolina, thought that he might be able to resurrect that program, and he has not been good.
24-34.
Yeah, he has not been good at East Carolina. But, he's a good football coach. He's going to be, I think, one of those guys. And East Carolina, they've got so much history as a really good football program. In the 90s, they were really, really good. I mean, if conference realignment was alive and well 30 years ago, East Carolina would probably be in the Big 12 right now, just because of the way they were playing at the time. And have things changed? That's a fan base that still expects to win and demands winning.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this is the last year. If Mike Houston can't get it right, if he gets blown out by a team that just moved up 2 years ago, they're going to be calling for his head.
Diesel, he was 37-6 at James Madison. And now
as good as it gets.
Yeah, as good as it gets. And now is 24-34 at ECU. Wesley Roberts on the Facebook stream says, I am biased talking about Liberty. He said, I'm biased because my brother-in-law runs their offense, but Liberty is going to put up some points and win.
Is Willie Corn still with them?
Should be.
Did he go? Did he travel with them?
I think so.
Your brother-in-law is Willie Corn?
That's the way I read it. Wesley Roberts. Okay, I'll tell you this. I do pick ECU. I did pick ECU. I don't have a ton of confidence in them, but I'm going to pick them anyways. I
love how you went like, I don't have a pick. I don't have a pick. I don't have a pick.
Bam!
I don't like this pick, but I'm taking it anyway.
I'm taking it because of Rajay Harris. That's the only reason. I love Rajay. He comes from a great family. Got to call his games when he was at Burns 2019. Fantastic running back. I'm going to ECU. And one more time, Diesel's upset pick is
Navy at home plus 9.5
Sound the horns.
Against Memphis.
I don't hate that. I really don't. I think that might be a safe pick.
Shout out to @Guy Randall, who just followed us on Twitter, @TheFanUpstate.
Let's
Shout
go.
out to you, Guy.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you being a Tolo. We'll have Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings in the very next segment. If you missed it earlier in the show, we've got it for you next. much of a separation do you have between the Crimson Tide and the Longhorns?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. As always, I appreciate it. And I'll be honest, I really don't even look at the AP poll. Like, I don't know who they have ranked where, why, any of that. To me, the AP poll does not carry a lot of weight. I don't even think voters know, especially early in the season, what are we voting on? Are we voting on, who we think the best teams are, who has the best resume, who we project to have the best resume at the end of the year? I really don't know. So for me, there's two approaches you can take here. One is a power rating standpoint. Which team is better? And right now, I do have Alabama as my number one power-rated team. Texas is number two, but guys, rounded to the nearest tenth of a football point per game, they are tied. Both Alabama and Texas have a K-Ford rating right now of 29.6, which means each of these teams is 29.6 points better than the average FBS team if they were to play on a neutral field. So it is very, very tight. There is very little that separates those two from a power rating standpoint. I will say from a resume standpoint, at this point in time, I would give the nod to Texas. I have Texas number 3 in my most deserving rankings. So how much have you accomplished this year relative to what would be expected of the number 12 team playing your schedule? Texas is number 3 behind Northern Illinois and Georgia. Alabama, for me, and most deserving, right now comes in at number 14.
Kelley, from a couple of teams who have impressed to now a team that has depressed its entire fan base, Florida State, still at number 37 in your power rankings, 1 spot behind Memphis, 2 spots ahead of Georgia Tech, both teams that they have lost to. We went back and forth on Texas being in the top 10 a couple of years ago, and I know your ratings are predictive, not resume-based, but what do your numbers see in Florida State, despite the repugnant performances that we've seen thus far, that still has them rated in the top 40?
So I'm glad you asked the question, because you're right. For those that have been listening for a couple of years, it was 2 or 3 years ago now, that late in the year, I mean, week 11, 12, 13, my model and many others out there had Texas as a top 10 power rated team, despite at the time 3 or 4 regular season losses. So that's a different case. Texas late in the year, a couple of years ago, from a power rating standpoint, than Florida State right now after 3 games being 0-3. I will tell you that Florida State is only power rated when, what'd you say? I'm looking it up here, number 37 right now. The only reason Florida State is number 37 is because they were number 12 for me in the power ratings to come into the year, and we still have a significant amount of preseason weight assigned to your rating. We can't phase it out fast enough, it seems like, for Florida State. So I will say right now confidently that unless Florida State turns it around and starts performing at a much higher level than they have through their first 3 games, they will continue to plummet in the power ratings. If we removed the preseason weight, the preseason component for this Florida State team is a team that's looking like they're in the 60s or the 70s in the power rating, certainly not in the top 40. I will also say for Florida State, they are my number 1 biggest underachiever to this point. We expected them to have, more than 2.5 wins at this point of the season. They currently have 0. They have also been downgraded already almost 10 points in the model. That's a massive amount for just 3 games in. They've been downgraded 10 points. It's the second most that any team has been downgraded this year in FBS. So certainly Florida State needs to turn it around. Their fan base at this point has probably given up on the season and the goals that they've had. And a lot of pieces I'd say, hey, it's too early to give it up. They're 0-3, but we haven't started conference play. No, we've started conference play. They're 0-2 in the ACC. The season that Florida State fans were expecting, it's not there. It is a lost cause, and I don't say that lightly after just 3 games.
Kelley, we had a barn burner in Columbia on Saturday here in Gamecock country. JB, one of our Tolos, wants to know, putting you on the spot here, if you can tell the percentage of chance the Gamecocks have of winning 8 games this season despite the loss to LSU.
Absolutely. So this is something I can do with any team every single Monday when the numbers get updated. If I look at the South Carolina team projection tab, which is on the website, k4ratings.com, right now the model is suggesting there is a 13% chance that South Carolina reaches at least 8 regular season wins. So a 13% chance. If we look at their schedule, I've got them as a big favorite, of course, this weekend against Akron, a comfortable favorite at Vanderbilt in week 11, and at home against FCS Wofford in week 13. Outside of that, right now, the Gamecocks are projecting as underdogs in each of their remaining games, but Texas A&M at home, and Missouri at home. 2 teams power rated inside the top 16. Both of those right now are projecting as 1-score games. So certainly there's still a path for South Carolina to have a good year, even after what ended up being a disappointing loss. Man, they did play pretty darn well against LSU. I've got a 74% chance to go bowling, a 13% chance to reach at least 8 wins.
His website, kfordratings.com, is your college football cheat sheet. Kelley, how do your ratings look at, or what does it say about teams coming off a bye? And how do you factor in injuries into your model? I'm looking at, NC State, who's got Grayson McCall injured and won't play this week against Clemson.
So these are 2 really important questions. Let's answer the first one first. Coming off of a bye, coming off of an off week, my model does not capture, that's what I call a scheduling dynamic. That's one of the things my model does not capture. So when you're a team that's had additional rest compared to your opponent, certainly as a viewer, as a fan, as a bettor, you're going to account for that and make manual adjustments. The model at this stage does not make that adjustment. That is on my future wish list of things to add into the model. So that's that answer. I do think it's important. I do think that data will show us that if you have more time to prepare than your opponent, you're going to perform better than expected relative to what the model would expect with a equal rest time and equal prep time. With regard to the injuries, if it's a quarterback, you talk about Grayson McCall. If it's a quarterback, I can and do go into the model and manually make an adjustment. Really, any other position at this stage, because I'm doing it for 134 teams and it's a side hobby, it's not my main gig, right? I don't usually make the manual adjustments for injuries except for these extreme cases. Now, injuries do then get implicitly accounted for because the model will say, wow, that NC State offense did not look as good as we thought. Something's going on there if I didn't make an adjustment for an injury to a McCall or somebody like that. And so week over week, it's going to adjust the expectation to the point where if a player misses a significant amount of time, the model is already accounted for. Well, not this player being missing, but this player not playing very well, let's say. And so it's made that adjustment. So quarterbacks, I can manually adjust. Every other position, it gets implicitly factored in over the course of the injury.
Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings joining us right here on the Fan Upstate as he does on Wednesdays at 4:20. Kelley, we know, I said it a minute ago, we're in Gamecock country, but if I don't correct myself, I'll get scolded. We're also in Tiger country as well. Clemson now, one of the favorites in the ACC. When you look at your projected ACC standings, boy, you talk about thin. You talk about close. Miami and Clemson right there neck and neck. What separates the two?
Yeah, right now they are neck and neck. And if you look at it from a power rating standpoint, I've got Miami at number 8 in the country, and I have Clemson at number 12. If I go to their team sheets, for Clemson, I'll start with the hometown team. I've got them in the top 20 on offense, top 25 on defense. The separator is probably right now in my model, the Miami offense, which I have in a top 10 unit. The defense is also good, coming in at number 16. So for me, it's probably the Miami offense that has been, if I had to pick one unit that separates these two teams, it would be that one. It is notable, though, that Clemson does not play Miami. Clemson does not play Boston College, who's a team who has emerged in the ACC as a potential contender here. If you look at the other contender being Louisville, that's a home game for the Tigers in Week 10, coming off of an off week. Again, something that we know is important, even if it's not explicitly factored into the model. So the path is there for Clemson. Right now, I've got a 13% chance to win out and finish the year at 11-1, a 45% chance to win at least 10 regular season games, which for my model and what it's suggesting, that's kind of that threshold that Clemson will need to reach to be in that at-large conversation. So certainly Tiger fans should be feeling good about the improvement that they made following the Georgia game with absolutely just wiping the floor with App State. A great performance. This team's been upgraded about 1.5 points since the preseason after a small downgrade after the Georgia game. So Clemson is right there. They're a favorite in every single game remaining. There's only 2 left on the schedule that my numbers even project to be 1 score. That is Louisville, like I talked about, at home. And the next week at Virginia Tech on the road. Of course, that's always a tricky place to play. So those are the 2 games to keep an eye on if you're Clemson fan. If you can avoid stubbing your toe elsewhere, though, I really like this team's chances to at least make it to Charlotte and be in contention for that AQ, but maybe even get one of those coveted at-large spots in the CFP.
At K Ford Ratings on Twitter, we appreciate Kelley Ford joining us here on the Fan Upstate. Artolo JD brings up a really good point that your model can put teams from years past against teams from this year. The narrative is always trying to goat this year's national champion year in and year out as the greatest team that's ever been. Does your model find that to be true, that the best teams are getting better? Or how does it see the last few champs power rated against each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm pulling it up right now because this is not something that I keep published on the website. So certainly, though, I can bring it up and talk through this. If we want to talk about some of the best teams ever in college football, since I'm talking to, a Clemson market here, that 2018 Clemson team for me is probably the best team, or at least one of the best teams of all time playing college football at the highest level. Right now, I have them number 2 in my historical power ratings, only behind 1971 Nebraska. So many people would argue that's really not the modern era. But if I'm looking, at the top power rated teams in recent years, there has been a separation, as I've got the spreadsheet up now in front of me. During the CFP era, we really did see, whether it was Alabama, whether it was Clemson there for a few years under Dabo Swinney, Georgia near the tail end of the 4-team era, we did see a bit of a separation, a bit of a gap from the most elite programs. And I'll say, anywhere between 4 and 6 teams in any given year. Of course, those that I mentioned were year over year there. They were trending to a place where there was a separation of power between them and the rest of college football. What I would say, at least for right now, this year, is that I already talked about Alabama and Texas being deadlocked at number 1 on my power rating. But if you go to Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, even Ole Miss down at number 6, those top 6 teams right now are separated by only about 4.5 points in the power rating. So I don't think there's the same level of separation at the very, very top that we've seen in years past this year, at least right now. Now, there is then a drop from Ole Miss to number 7 a little bit. So, yes, the data does support that. I'm curious to see how the transfer portal era, the increased usage of it, the NIL factor now, and the COVID year still hanging in there, all these changes that are happening, does that reset and kind of balance the powers at the top, or does it allow them to further break away? I think it's too early to say, but this year in particular, we have a grouping of teams that are all very equally power rated, which makes for a fun race.
Kelley, when you look at Georgia, Kentucky on Saturday night, a game that surprised a lot of people, and for a few minutes it looked as if the Wildcats had a chance. I thought that would impact the most deserving category for the Bulldogs. Which would you say when you have a scenario like that with a highly ranked team who almost loses, almost gets upset to a team that's not ranked, which category does that impact the most?
Yeah, so at this point in the season, that's going to impact the power ratings more, right? So Georgia actually fell about 3 points in the power rating. They went from number 1 to number 4 in my model because of the struggles that they had on the road at Kentucky, a team that I now have power rated number 34. Kentucky, meanwhile, was upgraded about a field goal. They played much better than the model expected. So from a power rating standpoint, that's the change. But from a resume standpoint, a most deserving standpoint, at the end of the day, yes, scoring margin, margin of victory, margin of defeat, that does matter. But what matters most is your win-loss record relative to expected. And for Georgia right now, yes, they have the Tennessee Tech win, FCS team who is not highly power rated. But you look at the other 2 wins, neutral site against power rated number 12 Clemson and at now power rated number 34 Kentucky. There's not, this early in the year, there is not a lot of other resumes out there that are more impressive than what Georgia has. So they actually moved up 1 spot in the resume ranking. They are now number 2 for me behind only Northern Illinois in that metric. So Georgia, yes, it was concerning from a power rating standpoint. They were deducted points and certainly want to see a bounce back there. This is still a top 10 offense. It's still a top 5 defense for me in my model. So we still expect Georgia to be a good team this year, but they are not the runaway favorites that maybe at certain points in the preseason, some, including my own model, were suggesting they might be. So Kentucky certainly showed well, even in a loss. Georgia did not play up to the level that we expected, but they did get the win. And at the end of the day, in a most deserving ranking, that's what's most important.
Kelley, Artolo T. Ray asks jokingly if your model factors in poor refereeing. He's a South Carolina Gamecock fan, and he's still bent about a lot of those plays in the LSU game. But another Tolo of ours, Dan B., is a diehard Nebraska fan, and he wants to know the percentages of Nebraska winning either 9 or 10 games, according to your model.
Yeah, give me a second here. I'll pull up Nebraska, who has certainly had a great start to the year. I have them right now in the most deserving at number 27, and they're number 26 in the power ratings. This is a team that's been upgraded about 2 points since the preseason. So certainly liking what it's seeing from the quarterback Raiola there, and with Matt Rule in year 2. Certainly we expect big things. Next year, maybe he's even a little bit ahead of schedule. For Nebraska, I think the question was 8 or 9 wins. I've got a 61% chance to win at least 8 games and a 30% chance to win at least 9 games. If you look at the Nebraska schedule, big game on Friday night. Really, really big game. They've got Illinois at home. My numbers do like Nebraska in that game, 67% chance to win. It's a one-score projection, though, so those are kind of toss-up games for me. Rutgers in a couple of weeks is a one-score game. At Indiana, coming off of an off week, is a one-score game. And then to close the year on the road at Iowa, a game that's always on Friday after Thanksgiving, which I absolutely love. That's a one-score projected game too. So only the road trips to Ohio State and USC are currently projecting as larger than one-scored underdogs for Nebraska. So it could be a special year for the Cornhuskers. My model is impressed with what it's seen. The defense is number 3 in the country, and the offense has been better than we thought it was going to be. They're right now at number 70. If they can keep improving that, it could be a great year for the Cornhuskers.
Kelley, we appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you again real soon, man. Great job.
Can't wait. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
What's up to Scotty Hawkins, who says he created a YouTube channel just to log in and watch us the live show here on the Fan
Let's
Stadium.
go.
What up, Scotty?
What a G.
Is it true that Scotty doesn't know? Scotty doesn't know. Whoa. So don't tell Scotty. Oh, so you probably would know that song.
You're too old.
Yeah, it's from a movie. It's time now to take a whip around the sports world, see what else is happening out there with the last 4 minutes of the show. These are our daily wires.
Buzz, buzz, buzz.
The buzz happening out there. The Braves lost again last night, this time to the Reds 6-5, 81-70 on the season. Their game against the Reds is now underway. Top of the first, 0-0. They are 10 games back. And you can wave bye-bye to their playoff chances.
Adios.
Toast.
Adios.
Yep.
Is it bad to say that? But it's done.
WNBA is expanding into Portland with a team beginning play in 2026.
Ooh.
This comes less than 11 months after WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert wrote in a letter that consideration of a Portland expansion team would be deferred for now. The league announced a Wednesday a return to the city as its 15th franchise to begin play in 2026. What do you think changed your mind?
Well, I don't know, but that means you and I get to add an NBA or WNBA franchise to our WNBA challenge where we guess the cities.
What are the Portland Sea Cows? No, that's not right. The Portland. We'll workshop it. We'll workshop it. The Miami Dolphins plays Tua on injured reserve Tuesday after he suffered another concussion. That means he'll be out for 4 weeks. The following week after his first available return is a bye, so it'll actually be 5 weeks before we possibly see Tua back on the field. Wake Forest, we talked about this yesterday. They canceled their return game at Ole Miss. Well, they have now announced they have filled that canceled open date with a home-and-home series with Oregon State. Make it make sense.
Yeah.
Why do people in Corvallis care about Wake Forest and vice versa? Maybe it's a winnable game if you're Wake Forest. Adrian Wojnarowski has dropped his last bomb. He is retiring from ESPN to become the GM of his alma mater, St. Bonaventure.
No more Woj bombs.
No more Woj bombs.
I love Woj bombs, man.
Maybe he'll still drop a couple of them on us, but he's going to be busy with this new venture. Congratulations to him. Falcons head coach Raheem Morris did you see this? He defended Drake London's gun celebration at Monday Night Football. He says he was probably shooting a T-shirt cannon, not an actual gun.
That's what. Good response, Raheem. Good answer.
Why do we have a problem? I didn't see what Drake did, but haven't quarterbacks in college football and pro been doing the bow and arrow thing a long time? That's a weapon too. It's a proto gun. It is. Marshall head coach Charles Huff is attempting to. This is funny. He's attempting to lure Ohio State players who can run fast to transfer to Marshall for free all-you-can-eat biscuits at Tudor's Biscuits, a local establishment there in Huntington.
Not mistaken for Hooters.
No, Tudor's.
Tudors.
T-U-D-O-R-S, not T-O-O-T.
Sounds a little similar to me. I'm just saying.
Going back to the NFL and to the Miami Dolphins, former Dolphin and Texas Longhorn Ricky Williams has been nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He tallied 10,000 rushing yards and 2,000 receiving yards in his career and 66 touchdowns as a pro. I remember when he came out of Texas, he was damn near unstoppable.
Pretty good stats. I guess that's Hall of Fame.
And then he got into the weed and changed his entire personality.
Not good.
Jordan Love has returned to practice for the Green Bay Packers. Don't know if he'll play on Sunday. I would be shocked if he did, but he's dealing with a knee injury. Take your time, Jordan. Come back when you're healthy, when you get right.
They won without him Sunday with Malik Willis. I mean, hey, it's not a bad backup. So yeah, I'd say keep him out.
And finally, Baker Mayfield has weighed in on the Bryce Young story in Carolina getting benched. He said Bryce's story is, quote, far from finished. He would know how Carolina can screw up and slow down your development as a quarterback. He knows.
Bo knows. No, Baker knows. Sorry, Baker knows. I like Baker, man. I'm a Baker guy. And look, I'll say this. Baker has a point. He's right. His career could continue, but Baker has intangibles that Bryce Young just doesn't have. I don't know if I'm buying that.
But Baker looked an awful lot better still didn't look great, but in Cleveland, he looked a lot better than Bryce did
Right.
in Carolina.
We'll do it again tomorrow. It'll be a Thursday edition high school coaches spotlight and a ton more to get to on Wire to Wire.
You're going wire to wire with Diesel and Culbertson on the Fan Upstate.
Here's a fun little did you know? You can now use your body's own healing properties to revitalize your achy joints and get that real lasting pain relief you've been looking for. Hey, it's Rob Brown, and I am talking about advanced regenerative medicine at QC Kinetics. If you are tired of arthritic pain in your knees, hips, back, your shoulders, you need to check this out. Everybody is talking about regenerative medicine, and the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are experts in these amazing treatments. People are raving about the results. You can enhance your joints, improve mobility, and get back to doing the stuff you love without pain and without drugs or surgery or downtime. Under the leadership of Medical Director Dr. Mitchell Scheinkup, QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in this exciting breakthrough using cellular therapies, and they've got tens of thousands of satisfied patients. And oh, by the way, the consultation, totally free. Call now, take action, get that lasting joint pain relief with QC Kinetics, 864-448-3772.